All right, everyone. Looks like we got a full crowd, so thanks for coming and showing interest in the school board meeting tonight. We've got 5 new faces here, soon to be school board members once you're sworn in momentarily. I have the honor of filling in as chair, if not for just a small moment. Our first order of business tonight is going to be the flag salute, followed by the oath of office and the school board chair nomination, among other business, but the new chair will be taking care of that. So let's stand for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Item number 3, oath of office. Dr. Phillips, you're going to be swearing in the new board members.
Yeah, so I talked to a few of you and you were all okay with doing it all at the same time. So let's just take care of this now and say, let's all stand up and I'll read along and then I'll read it. And if you can just, I'll chunk it up, right? So you can just, so I, say your name, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Oregon, and the laws thereof, and the policies of Newburgh Dundee Public Schools, 29J. During my term, I will faithfully and impartially discharge the responsibilities of the school board member to the best of my ability. Thank you.
Congratulations. Do you feel different? All right, so next order of business is to elect the chairperson. So as acting chair, I'll open up the floor to nominations for chairperson of the Newburgh Dundee School District Board of Directors. Do I have any nominations for chair?
I would like to nominate Nancy Woodward for chair. Nancy had 8 years on the Silver Falls Library District, and I think she brings a lot of great experience to that from that position and would be a great president and chair.
We have 1 nomination for Nancy Woodward for chair. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
It's been first and seconded for Nancy. I'll open up for a vote. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
All those abstained. All right, motion passes. Nancy, congratulations. You are a new chairperson for the Newburgh Dundee School District Board of Directors.
Thank you for your confidence. And I think we'll have a good job and do a good job working together. And so now we have nominations to elect the vice chair of the board. Are there nominations for that?
I'd like to nominate Trevor DeHart. He's been on the board the longest and knows the board policies and all the rules, and so I'd like to nominate Trevor.
Is there a second to that? Without a second, then that nomination would not go forward. Is there another nomination for vice chair?
Thanks. I'd like to nominate Deb Bridges.
Is there a second for Deb Bridges as vice chair?
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion or comment? If not, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Anyone opposed? Anybody in abstention? Okay, Deb Bridges will be the vice chair of the Newburgh School District. The next issue is to review the agenda. We have, do we have additions and deletions from the agenda? Anybody else have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I'd like to add a discussion over the policy KABA, the parental rights.
Okay, we could put that under 11 after the signatures, that one, okay? KABA policy discussion. Any other additions or deletions? Okay, if there are no further ones, we'll go ahead with the agenda. Then next thing on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the board on 6/27/23, the work section. And these are in your packet. And are there any additions or corrections to this?
I believe there should be a correction. I don't see where we, or the last board approved Dr. Phillips and Scott's contracts. And I don't know if that's lumped under something else, but I don't see anything calling it out specifically.
I think if we look at the
Was that
June
the-
13th,
Oh, was it June 13th
I
meeting
think-
and not last meeting?
yeah, I think it was in
Yeah,
June.
my bad.
Wow.
So
That's no problem. Thank you for bringing that up, though. Any other comments about the agenda, the minutes? If not, is there a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
I'll move that the Newburgh School District Board of Directors accept the minutes for the June meeting as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, call for the question. All those in favor of approving as presented? Aye. And those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next item on the agenda is public forum. And individuals who are on site can come and give comments. I think there was one person on site. Oh, we need the consent agenda first. Okay. New hires. Oh, yeah, that was not in our packet. That was online, but it's here. Okay, the consent agenda is in your booklet. So those have the accept probationary teacher contracts effective July 1st, 2023, and 2 teacher resignations effective June 30th, 2023. Is there a motion to accept this consent agenda?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor, any discussion? If there's no discussion, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda? Aye. Aye. Oppose? Motion carries 7-0. Okay, the next one is the public forum. And,
There's these two that are
Okay.
here.
okay, we have two people here. The first one is Kat McNeil. And she had, if you want to come to the mic, please.
2 minutes.
Okay.
On the agenda page. Right there. at the bottom.
Okay. You will have 2 minutes for,
I was gonna ask, Madam Chair, are we still staying with 2 minutes or can we go?
oh,
back?
we are for tonight until we,
Okay,
because this is published as that.
okay.
So thank you.
Do you have a timer so I can watch?
Yeah.
Okay. I have reference to material. Hi, I'm Kat McNeil. I'm Chair of the Budget Committee. This year I abstained from passing the Budget Committee due to many concerns. The first concern is our district does not have a strategic plan. A strategic plan should drive our budget. We've been without a strategic plan for 2 years. The second concern is that actuals that had passed and audited for the last few years were not matching with actuals that were shown in our budget for this year. The third concern was state funding. We had state funding freezed from January to May. I'm wondering how our bills were paid. When that conversation came up during the budget committee meeting, there was mention of borrowing from bond money. I'm curious of how that went because there are very legal parameters around that. My next concern is attorney fees. If you go look in the packet, there's examples of attorney fees. I'm wondering how those fees being divvied out and paid. Are they all for the district or are they for some of the 4 individual past board members? Specifically in 2021-22, the Fennell group is a group that was representing the individual board members and not the school district, yet we paid them. Along with that, I'd like to also say Hartner Wagner and Harong Long represents the district and the individuals, and how are we making sure that we are just paying for the district fees? Contracts, we had the policy CBG 2 years ago, which is superintendent evaluation. We no longer have that policy. So how do we know the evaluation is occurring and how evaluations look? There's a comparison of enrollment, schools, and salaries in regards to the contract that was recently passed for the superintendent. My next concern is Parents' Rights Handbook that was not legally passed as it was during a work session without any public comment. Therefore, it's not legal. And we already have a lawsuit in regards to not following public meeting laws. Finally, the land that is being donated back to NCC. I have a concern
That's time.
about the contract.
Thank you. Then next person who wants to speak is Andy Byerly.
Good evening. My name is Andy Byerly. I'm a resident of South Newburgh. I have 2 children in Newburgh Public Schools. Thank you for the opportunity to give public comment tonight. First, I'd like to give a quick welcome to our new board members. I wish the 7 of you all the best as you build relationships with each other and with the district and school leaders and with the families of Newburgh as you guide our schools into this next chapter. Second, I want to be very transparent in that I am an employee of the Oregon Department of Education. My comments tonight are my own as a community member and not in any way affiliated with my position of employment. I'd like to comment tonight on an article published in the Newburgh Graphic last Friday, July 7th, entitled "Newburgh Schools Make Strides in State Tests." At first glance, this is a headline we all want to see, right? Our students are growing academically and the work we're doing as a district is showing itself in one particular measure. However, I want to draw the board's attention to the fact that this article was published prematurely. Official statewide testing results are not released in July, but rather in mid-September, and district and school accountability information are published in mid-October. The article in the graphic made no mention that the highlighted results are preliminary or unofficial, and this will be an important consideration for the board, for district leadership, and the community in the event that the official results are different from these unofficial results. Prematurely publishing such an article could easily lead to confusion, perpetuation of misinformation, and an overemphasis on state test scores at the expense of other measures of student success. Please don't get me wrong. I want to see our students succeed academically, and I look forward to seeing an article with a similar headline in September. However, the premature publication of this article does make me question its purpose. Was it really to showcase work done in the district to improve student achievement, or was it published for another timely reason? Moving forward, I would ask the district to take better care in how it communicates about student achievement and to be transparent about the
That's time.
purposes of this communication. Thank you.
Thank you. The other comments we have are, were submitted by email. And they are in the board packet after the acceptance of the consent agenda.
Okay. So I'll read these in the order they were received. First is Robert Youngman. As the former director of the physical plant services for Newburgh School District, it is extremely clear to me that our students, our outstanding staff members, and our entire Newburgh Dundee community are all enormously benefiting, and that the district is growing extremely well with Steve as the superintendent. He shares, speaks, and acts on what is truth and common sense in our much needed life of faith in and for our country, community, and what is the very best for our kids as they grow up. Steve must remain. Bob Youngman. Penny from Penny Raider. Welcome to the start of an adventurous new year. I know that you all enjoy having fun, and I hope that you do as you work together. 5 of you ran on common sense, and now it is time to show that you are of common sense that reaches across to all individuals and includes everyone. What a great example you will be to all students in Newburgh NDSD as you treat each other with kindness and respect. This is how a true team functions. There seems to be a swirl of misinformation regarding a contract written for Dr. Phillips. I would like to remind everyone that this contract was reviewed by OSBA attorneys, and it is legal and legit. Regarding the thought of firing Dr. Phillips, keep in mind that there was a law passed by those in Salem that states that a superintendent can't be fired without prudent reason. Thank you, Salem, for doing so. I would like to also remind everyone that Dr. Phillips is a man who is very strong and has endured much nefariousness over this last year. He is a superintendent that reaches out to everyone, inspiring those he works with to do their very best in all aspects of their position. He has a great team he is leading, who is accomplishing so much. Heather Bigsby, hired by Phillips, did a thorough review of the previous admin mess of the budget and ironed out and resolved some important issues. He worked through the mess that he inherited of the school bus situation last fall that was created by other individuals, and was able to rehire, with the help of the previous school board, or SB, first student bus transportation for this fall. Last year, he helped with the selection of several current students who were encouraged to speak with other students about taking state tests, which resulted in students being much more excited to participate. What a fabulous idea that was. Dr. Phillips has a team working hard to assist in increasing math, reading, and writing scores, and so far his team and the students. Okay, next from Steve Sherwood, Newburgh School Board. First, I want to extend a hearty welcome to the new board members. I look forward to the integrity, transparency, and diligence you will bring to your service. I believe that teachers are some of the most poorly compensated workers in communities across the country. With details becoming public of Dr. Phillips's very generous new contract, featuring significant bumps in salary, benefits, and other compensation after one extremely bumpy year in his position, I fully expect him to advocate with the board for equally, if not more generous, increases in the compensation for the teachers in the district. These teachers are the true heroes of Newburgh schools. If NPS can compensate its superintendent this lavishly, we certainly should do the same for teachers across the schools of the district. This will come at real cost, some of which I suggest could be recouped by the immediate termination of all relationships with Ty Smith and the district severing itself from any legal cases, current or imminent, involving former board members or Dr. Phillips. Steve Sherwood. Next, from Zephyr Bizet, I think. Bizot, sorry. Dr. Phillips and school board members. I was so excited to attend last month's board meeting and hear about the amazing accomplishments happening in our district. While the employment records and building progress were highlights of Dr. Phillips's leadership, the results of the team he has built really stood out to me. That team produced the state test scores in the last year, showing incredible improvements from past averages, and I needed to take the time to say thank you for the investment in our kids' education. Zephyr Bizot, Newburgh parent. Next, Travis Laxton. I am writing in support of Dr. Phillips continuing as superintendent, as well as stability for the school district and my two children. I am the parent of a middle school and high school student in Newburgh. I have watched our community be torn apart by political partisanship and lawsuits. This partisanship has not benefited my two children's education, but only the adults who are pushing their agendas. Dr. Phillips has increased test scores in the district, which were previously subpar, and balanced the budget. Both of these benefit my children's education. The community chose to elect new school board, I believe largely due to the turmoil and controversy in Newburgh. The incoming school board members ran as moderates, which is what this community needs. And yet they are seeking to terminate Dr. Phillips' contract in violation of state law, Senate Bill 1521. I also understand that this will cost the district $1.2 million. This attempt to terminate Dr. Phillips is anything but moderate and furthers the turmoil and controversy in our town and school district. This seems like nothing more than seeking revenge. How is that moderate? I want stability and moderation for the sake of my children. They only get a public education once. I do not agree with the plan to terminate Dr. Phillips and want him to continue to complete the completion of his contract. I am also concerned about the long-term impact that terminating Dr. Phillips' contract will have on Newburgh's ability to find a quality superintendent in the future. Newburgh is developing a reputation as a place where no superintendent will want to work. The madness has to stop. This is about our children's education and not adult agendas. Okay, next one, Roy and Terry White. It comes to my attention that there may be an attempt to terminate the current employment contract with Superintendent Dr. Phillips without cause. I submit the following as a comment on the employment of Dr. Phillips. If an attempt is anticipated to terminate the contract with Dr. Phillips as the superintendent of the school district by the newly elected school board members, such as a move would be a political one that would have far-reaching effects to a school district than has had enough of political maneuvering in a forum that is supposed to be bipartisan. It is time that the sophomoric back and forth between two factions over control of the school board stop and the energy be used instead to bring some stability to the school district that is sorely needed by the students, the families, and the community members served by the school district. Retention of Dr. Phillips as the superintendent of the Newburgh School District would go a long way to bring some needed stability and possibly convince all concerned that the new school board is actually working for the betterment of the school district, students, and community, rather than to prove a political point. Roy and Teresa White. Next is from B. Kaiser. Dear school board members, congratulations on your newly sworn in positions and welcome back to Renee Powell and Trevor DeHart. These are very exciting times. I am eager to see how the new majority board members will definitely handle the transition to new leadership. After watching your campaigns play out and seeing that you ran on the platform of being nonpartisan and having common sense, these should be some great years with you being a majority. We will have to watch and see that you honor those campaign commitments. The fabulous strides the district has accomplished in the past year under the leadership of Dr. Phillips has been fantastic. I was thrilled to see that with the mass exodus of teachers and staff last year, it was successfully resolved by Dr. Phillips. It is obvious that he has put in place excellent teachers who had a lot of competition for the positions they filled. These teachers have gotten the test scores up. These are great strides with more work to be done. Bravo, Dr. Phillips. The rumors around town are that this new majority board is planning to replace Dr. Phillips with Dan Bush. This would be $1 million mistake and certainly not acting in a common sense manner nor being nonpartisan. With the obvious improvements in morale, student retention, student replacement, and implementation of improved teacher quality, the district is doing very well under Superintendent Phillips's leadership. As a taxpayer, I voice my intent that the new school board majority should leave well enough alone, choose to be nonpartisan, and get along with Dr. Phillips and use the common sense to not waste any more of the taxpayers' money. With the board majority being of the party that wants acceptance for all, I encourage them to accept the superintendent and fellow board members and respect their views, accomplishments, and successes. Show us all that you truly want healing for our community. Respectfully, Beth Kaiser. Okay, last one. Bethany Laxton. Bethany Laxton. I'm writing today to support Dr. Phillips and his continuation as the superintendent of Newburgh Schools. As a high school student, I've seen the impacts and the turmoil created by the constant school board drama and turnover. As students get invested in this too, the perpetual school board fights are becoming polarizing. If the board terminates our superintendent, especially without valid reasons, it will further add to the tension and hostility that is infiltrating Newburgh schools. We need consistency. Furthermore, this is in violation of state law and to my knowledge will cost our district $1.2 million. Who is going to be impacted by the loss of finance? You cannot keep pushing these extremes. It's ripping the community apart from the school outwards. Furthermore, Dr. Phillips is personable. Both me and my middle school siblings have seen and interacted with him while in school. From my perspective, he makes an honest attempt to build a relationship with students and rebuild our community. Dr. Phillips is a kind person, and as a student, I would very much like him to see him stay. Education is about the students, not about how you feel. Please stop making decisions that will impact our future based on subjective reasons. Reality isn't optional, and education isn't about you. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. I know that in previous boards, there were never any comments reflecting things from the public, but I think that that is not in state law or open meetings law. So I wondered if anybody had any comments about what has been read, what has been shared. I think there's no reason not to discuss since this seems to be a theme in some letters.
Hey, it's working. I mean, I'll just say that was the first I've heard of that rumor. So, Dr. Phillips, I can tell you I have no intention to terminate you without any cause or anything like that. So I'm looking forward to working with you.
I would like to reiterate a conversation we had a couple months ago, that the goal is not to fire Dr. Phillips. And this is obviously a very well orchestrated campaign. The language is so consistent through these messaging, but I would like to point out the comment by Bethany. And education is about the students, and please stop making decisions that will impact our future based on subjective reasons. Well, Bethany, we're a new board, and I can only imagine that those comments were directed to the previous board because we have not had any decision-making opportunities. And I think that she has some good comments, and I appreciate that she's concerned about that, but I'm equally concerned at the orchestrated campaign and the continuation of misinformation directed at the board. And it does not serve the community moving forward. So my goal, as I told you before, was not to fire you. I would like you to be very successful. I would like the school district to be successful. I want to see improvements, and I want to be a part of a very dynamic board that works as Nancy's campaign was moving forward. So to all of those who are very nervous about the direction with all these letters, I'd like to sort of ease your concerns. However, I would like to say that the information provided with Kat McNeil, I think, is going to really require that the board looks at some of these concerns. Some of this might need to be in executive session if it has to do with litigation. And, we'll look to the board chair to help us with that direction. But I think this is worth exploring. And don't, the microphone and me, I'll talk forever. So unless I have time.
Does anybody else have any other comments they want to make? If not, I want to thank everybody for what they wrote in. And as I said at the forum when we were running, there was a rumor that I wanted to run to fire Dr. Phillips. And I heard it there. And I, at the forum, said, the candidates forum, I said, that certainly was never on my agenda. And it's still not on my agenda. So our goal is to work together for the community, for the best for our children. There is one thing that I think that maybe the controversy continues is to avoid problems is Dr. Phillips contract is public, it's public document. Anybody can call the office and get it. But to avoid problems, and this is from the Oregon School Boards Association, it says after the top executive's evaluation document is completed and discussed with the person, the document is available for public. So the evaluations that the previous board did, that should be public, and the salary and benefits must be discussed in open session. This is from AOR 199-040-0020 parentheses 2. And your board, the last board at the meeting in June passed it on consent. And it was not discussed in open session. So I think that did not help bringing unity. And so I would just like to say that as board chair, my goal is to be as transparent as legally possible. So thank you. So now we go to reports and presentations and discussions items. The next one is June expenditures and revenue reports. Heather Bixby. Thank you.
So in your board packet is the pretty typical monthly report. It starts out showing your revenues, and of course, this is for the month of June. So in June, in July and August, we make several changes where we're recording late revenue that comes in or late expenditures that are needing to go out that should have been charged to the prior year. So these numbers will change. So you'll continue to get a June update along with the current month until we've kind of settled where our numbers are going to end for the audit. So I would expect probably in August and maybe beginning of September, you will see your last June expense report, and that expense report should be very close to what the auditors report on. The only exception would be as if there was an audit journal entry for something that we totally missed. So you'll see probably marked movement in what is currently showing to you now versus what you will see next month, just because we still have a lot of revenues that have not come in yet for grant draws, things like that, because we have to wait till June 30th to draw on all of our expenses. We're still waiting for some of those expenses to be paid. So especially in revenues, you'll see a pretty significant jump probably in August in the revenues that are coming in for last year. So and then expenditures, there wasn't, we made the adjustments that were approved last month in the resolution just to reappropriate some of the expenditures. And so that's reflected in this this expenditure report. So any questions on that stuff?
Does anybody have any questions for Heather?
You said when we would find out more closely to what it actually is, end of June?
So I would
July?
say probably by September, you'll see, yeah, by the September board meeting, that should pretty much be finalized.
I have a question. Is there anything in this document that concerns you?
Nothing at all.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, the next report is the middle school student fees. Andy Du Bois.
In front of you, I believe in your packet, you do have a fee sheet, and I'll walk you through kind of what we are looking at next year at Mountain View Middle School, as well as actually Hamilton Valley Middle School. I get one. I've never been told I have a quiet voice, so first. Is that gonna work? All right. So yeah, looking through those pieces, real quick, I'll make sure you have the same thing I have. The first.
Excuse me, I think for the video, you need to have the mic closer to your mouth, like maybe take it off the stand, because I see people saying they can't hear you.
Check, check. Check, 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 check. All right.
Thank you.
So the first. Like I'm Aerosmith or something over here.
All right. How's that? Better? Okay. So the first page is the proposed fees we would like to institute for next year. On page 2 are our past fees that we have for the last 2 years. And then if you have a page 3, there's a typical student fee to get an idea of what the cost would be for a student taking classes at Mountain View Middle School or Chehalis Valley Middle School to let the classes in place. Do you have all 3 of those pages? Okay. So a couple of changes to our first page, the post fees. One thing we are looking at the middle schools is when moving to a trimester, we had more opportunities for students to try different things. And one thing that we have been really focused on at the middle school level is really extending career technical pathways down to the middle level to really create a robust pathways for the high school to move forward and get some experience. And so you're looking at these classes, and some are Mountain View and some are Chehalis Valley. And we have different buildings, of course, different needs and different setups. But these are all ones that we believe will benefit our student. And there's some slight increases that we need to make sure we are accounting for. For example, and a highlight the PE uniform. All secondary schools have a PE uniform. And we're going from $15 to a $20 fee. That's a one-time fee. If you already have PE clothes for your 7th and 8th grade year, you can keep those and use those again as long as you don't grow out of them, and so on. And then we're changing up what we're doing because we're going from 18 weeks to a 12-week trimester. And so we're changing up what we're doing and how we're allocating those funds to help our students get the best experience possible. So the idea behind these fees are to provide resources and supplies for students. And we're a lot of project-based classes. For example, wood shop is a $20 fee. That's nothing when it comes to buying lumber anymore for our students and so on. We're adding a couple of other things. For example, both middle schools right now are in process of having some bond work done for innovation labs and 3D printers. And the spools for the 3D printers are quite expensive. And so just to have those students printing whistles or printing different things, it's going to take up a lot of resources. And so having those students be able to help offset those costs will be beneficial for us. Do you have any questions?
For students from maybe different backgrounds that may not be able to afford some of these things, do we have anything in place? I'm just thinking certain communities that maybe they have not as much income at home, and I don't want to see this be a barrier for people from those households to be able to, like you said, talk the 3D printing or wood shop or things that could benefit them in careers down the road.
Yeah, we don't turn away students when they want to do something like this. It's important that we offer opportunities for all of our students to make sure they are getting the best experience possible for them and for their career. We also do have classes that don't cost money. So low tech games, intramurals, creative writing at Chehalis Valley Middle School, among other things that students can also take without a fee, just depending on the course. So yes.
So yeah, so if someone were to if their house could just truly not afford that, then the district works with them to make sure okay. Correct. Thank you.
Yep.
Does anybody else have any other questions or comments? If not, thank you.
All right.
The next on the agenda, the next board items are all action items and the resolutions. The first one is resolution 2024-01, authorizing deposit and withdrawal.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt. Can we go back to the June expenditure? I do have some questions. I just was trying to do some calculations
Sure,
for Heather.
go ahead.
So on the first page, under special revenue, I'm just looking at flat out like percents used, and we're at the end of the school year, and there's things like special revenue 202, we're at 3.09%. So I don't know, the first page, I don't know what.
It's under special revenue, support
Yeah, it's
services,
just general ledger, first page.
instruction.
Okay.
Yeah, it's under expenditure. So we have a budget of 287,000. We've only used 8,900 basically. So are we, I don't know what special revenue is. Does that come like at the end of the year? We all of a sudden we use a lot of it as things come up, or so a two-part question. So does that ever get closer to 100%? And then the second question is, what happens with funds like that don't get used? If we budget 287,000, we're only using 3% or say 5%, what happens to those funds?
Okay, so first part of your question, a special revenue fund is designated by the state of Oregon as being something other than what is supported by tax dollars. So it's usually a grant or a revenue stream that is for a specific purpose or that a district has designated for a specific purpose. And so on, I'm trying to remember what this one is. I think this is the rent for property. Yeah. So the district owns some property that we rent out. And that money goes back into this fund to maintain the property, to pay anything that comes up with this property. And then it's at board discretion at the end of the year if they would like to move that to a different fund. But the whole idea of this is that we're maintaining a balance big enough to take care of any expenses with the house or the property that we're currently renting.
Okay.
So that we wouldn't see a huge expenditure in it unless there was something wrong.
Okay.
So that's why you're seeing a very low percentage. And it's something that they've just been putting money into each year or each month when the rent is paid. So that it's always there in
Sure.
case there's a problem. So included in this would be like our cell phone tower rentals. So if we were to have any problems with any of those sites that we needed additional funding for, it wouldn't have to come out of our general fund revenue because that money is accounted for in this special revenue fund. And that's been determined that the balance would stay in this special revenue fund. So
Okay.
we designated the remaining balance of this to stay for this next year.
I do see like another one, that student body funds is only at 20% for the year. Is that something similar then where?
Yeah,
We're-
sorry.
Yeah, we're just banking it, making sure if there's ever a need, we have it and it's not really utilized a lot.
So the student body funds are a little bit different. The students raise that money.
Mhm.
But some of their expenditures they buy through district processes so that they get a better price on it because we're a nonprofit by law.
Mhm.
So they're able to take advantage of our P cards and stuff like that. And so this is typically a flow through account where they charge stuff that gets billed to the district and then they pay the district out of their fundraising money. So this is money that the students manage at the school level. And it's basically from all their club fundraisers and field trip fundraisers, any kind of fundraiser that is done by any of the clubs at any of the school level.
Okay. And this isn't the parent groups over those clubs. These are them specifically.
These
So
are
like,
kids specific.
so like music program, they want to go Disneyland in a couple years or whatever. If that ever comes about again, that's the funds are part of this larger
Yes.
group. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments before we go back to? Okay, we'll return to resolution 2024-01, authorizing deposit and withdrawal. And this is a resolution that you have in your packet, and it was also online. Any discussion or questions about this?
Do we already have accounts at all of these banks?
Yes, we do.
Thank you.
I have a question. Why do we have accounts at 5 different banks and one of them's not even in the state of Oregon?
Which one are you?
Well, Zion Bank listed here. There's Wells Fargo, US Bank, Zion Bank, Piper Jaffray, and Umpqua Bank. And there's 5 different banks as official school board funds. This is just for wanting to know, understand how things are, but, and one of them's not in the state of Oregon, which seems a bit strange to me.
Yes, I'm not sure why they picked Zion Bank, but this is the flow through account for the investment of the bond that was recently passed. So there's a flow through account with Zion's where the money goes in and out to Piper Jaffray for investment purposes. And when payments come in, then Zion sends that directly to our bank, our primary bank, Wells Fargo. Some of these other smaller banks, the Umpqua Bank, US Bank, these are in the past, the student body funds have kind of been allowed to have accounts wherever they wanted or whatever was convenient for them. So we ended up with pretty much every school there for a while had their own bank. And so we had to include all these different banks on this resolution. This last year, Columbia Bank merged with Umpqua Bank. And so some of those student body accounts are now all in Umpqua Bank instead of being in Umpqua and Columbia. So we were able to take some of those off, but we're working on consolidating some of these down. And I don't know the reasoning behind using Zion Bank for the flow through for Piper Jaffray.
Did Piper Jaffray choose Zion Bank?
Possibly. I wasn't here during that process. That was part of the investment process right after the bond went through. And so I'm not really sure how that came about.
Do either of our more seasoned board members have recollection of how? It's strange to me to have a bank that isn't even in Oregon. And if it's something that Piper Jaffray required for the bond, that's one thing, but I think we would want,
I do know that when this last year, we received a donation of some Microsoft stocks. And one of the problems we ran into is that we had a hard time finding a local bank that would manage those stock proceeds. And so we ended up going through Zion to get those stock proceeds converted. So I don't know if that's the reason that they went with Zion, because we couldn't do it through Wells Fargo and we couldn't do it through US Bank. So we ended up having to go through Zion to make a flow through for the stock, maturing the stocks and converting them to cash, and then Zion transferred them to our Wells Fargo account. So I'm kind of wondering if they didn't run into the same problem, since it's the same type, they're investing it and then trying to cash out the stocks. And so I would guess that probably has more to do with it than Piper Jaffray saying, this is who you need to use.
I told you, don't give me a microphone. So what I'm just, I guess I'm maybe a little uncomfortable voting on a resolution to include a bank that's not in our area, that we don't exactly know what we're doing with, although I trust your information. Is it possible to authorize the deposits and withdrawals without Zion Bank in this what do we call it, resolution, until we find out whether it's even a bank we need to include?
You certainly can. The one downfall to that will be that any maturity that comes in on our GO bond, which is the major construction projects right now, we won't be able to collect any of it because there's not an authorization to go from bank to bank.
Oh, that's what you had said. That was about the possible pass through with Piper Jaffray. It's just,
that's the only thing that
kind of an
account
odd-
is used for, is the investment accounts. And it's an automatic flow through. The money goes in and Zion's automatically kicks it out to our.
And so when the bond is concluded, then
It will go
it's a
away.
bank that would,
Mhm.
okay.
But also our PERS bond is through that currently as well. So we have a PERS bond to buy down our rate. And that also flows through the Zions for payments.
Do we know how long we've been banking with Zion?
I don't know how long they've been using Zion. So I can definitely get that information and get back to you.
I appreciate it.
Only for 2 years?
I would just like a point of clarification. I believe it's Zion's Bank. So if we do move forward with this, I think we need to amend this to anything that mentions it is to be the proper name, because it's not Zion, it's Zion's Bank, I believe. Yep. I mean, just to be official, so.
That's good. Are there any other questions, guys? Dr. Phillips, do you have any things, any comments about this since you've been here? You might have more information than we do.
What I would say is I do like the idea of keeping it tighter. And so if we can drop a bank when the bond's over, I would be all for it. If it's tied to our PERS bond, that we'd have to find out if we can move that, but I get your point. We can investigate that.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Does anybody want to make a motion to approve this resolution as written with the correction that Zion's Bank is Zion and Zion's Bank? Yeah. Yeah.
I'll move to approve the motion with the amendment.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Those opposed? Nay. So the motion carries 6-1. The next is resolution 2024-02, authorizing deposit and withdrawal of funds. This is also a financial one, and it also has the same banks listed on it. Any questions on this? And discussion?
Just make the same amendment to the name as Zion's.
I move to accept the resolution with the amendment.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor? Any discussion first? No? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Nay. So that motion carries 6-1. Okay, the next resolution is resolution 2024-03, establishing designated school district appointments. This is appointments for who is going to be able, the appointments for chief administrative officer, custodian of funds, authorized purchase orders, federal grant representatives, deputy clerk, budget officer. This is all online on the school district website. And it's resolved to designate the following firms shall serve as district legal counsel. And there are 7 firms listed. Are there any discussion or questions?
Go ahead.
I was just gonna make a move to strike 5, Tyler Smith and Associates moving forward on this resolution.
Do you want to make a motion for that?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion for, or just to say that would be my my motion would be to accept this with that as a struck out.
Do you want to have more let's have more discussion before
Okay.
we ask for a second.
So I think I am similar to the banking question. That's 7 law firms or Tyler Smith's law firm. Do we need all of those law firms? What are their specialty areas that are critical and important? I understand, we've been embroiled in a lot of lawsuits and maybe some of this couldn't be discussed here today, but certainly if there's some clarity about why we have 7 law firms, and I would echo the concern about Tyler Smith.
And I just want to clarify, I'm not with that. I don't intend to, if there's anything that firm is still representing on, I think that is a discussion thing for executive session. But as I read this resolution, this is moving forward. So that would be my concern. We campaigned on moving away from controversy and and legal controversies that have cost us a lot of money. And this law firm has objectively cost us a lot of money from their legal advice. So that's my concern. That's the one firm I have a big problem with.
I would just say that considering that it's district legal counsel for us, I believe, that it'd be nice to have maybe a list of options we could choose between, understanding what they maybe specialize in or the reasons why they're on here. Obviously day one, so a little bit in the dark with some things, but it would be nice to maybe let us have more of a say in what's happening there rather than just the list that I assume was from last year.
So if we want to go down the list in order, I can tell you a little bit about them and why they're there. The first one, they are a law firm, Garrett, Heeman and Robertson out of Salem. They are, they're a typical law firm that lots of school districts use. They cover everything school law. They're not property attorneys. They're not, so they're a, I guess you would say quite a common law firm that deals with school issues. Hungerford, same thing. Hungerford Law out of Oregon City. They're probably the premier education law firm in the state of Oregon. Merceau and Shannon, bond attorneys. We haven't used them very much, frankly, at all, but they specialize in the bond, making sure the bond's going okay. WESD, Lisa Freely and Christine Nesbitt, they are out of the ESD. And we get them at a very, very good rate, and they also handle mostly day-to-day. We use them by far more than anybody else. Tyler Smith, you know about Tyler.
Could you expound as to what Tyler Smith brings to the table?
Well, I haven't really worked with Tyler Smith. I think I worked with him. We had one executive session where Tyler was present early on, and that's really the only work I've done with him.
So we're not currently have open bills or statements or need for
I can't speak
expertise
to
of
the
Mr.
financial,
Smith.
but what I can share with you is reiterate with what the superintendent says is we haven't had any direct contact with Tyler since the litigation that went before Judge Easterday. So this isn't somebody that we continue to talk to in say November or February or March or June or July.
He's not a traditional school attorney.
No.
You know, the ins and outs. So we don't use him.
So it'd be easy to strike him from the list.
Well, I would think so. However, I am not, how to be candid. As you know, we have a lot of lawsuits. There's stuff going on. And I would hate to say we strike him, kind of to Director Wolfer's point, and then he's still attached to something. So we can easily find that out. We can find out all 7 of them, what they're attached to and what they're not attached to, and report back.
And is it possible to not vote on this tonight, given questions that we may have about the need for some of them to be on this list? Or,
well, we're actively engaged in some of them.
yeah,
But compared to like what Heather said about like the banks, like if we can't get maturities off the one bank, if we don't approve it tonight, are we going to lose anything over the next 4 weeks or until we meet again if we want more understanding of the relationships, right?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. What I would hate to have happen is that in the next 4 weeks, there's something transpiring and they're like, sorry, I'm not your lawyer anymore.
could we do a 1-month extension and potentially, of course, this would up to be the board chair, have an executive session prior to the next meeting to understand the roles that these firms currently have and whether we're in a spot to be able to?
I was going to recommend something similar.
Okay.
Is approve it for a month until the next board meeting. I believe that's August 8th. And then we could surely have an executive session beforehand, give you all the information, and then you'd have to approve it again with amendments or not, whatever you choose.
Yeah. And can we wrap up in that tidy little motion that we do not engage Mr. Smith in any new new reasons to have him do work for the district?
Well,
Anything new from today?
if he's not on the list, then I won't use him without your permission.
But I mean, in the next course of the next month, that we don't hire Mr. Smith to do any work between now and,
I have a question. So it's saying the school year. So if we approve that, is that August or September? Or is this immediately?
I don't follow.
So if we approve this today, it says this is the resolution for the 23-24 school year. So does that mean immediately, or does that mean that the previous resolution that, Mr. Smith is on should carry over until what date? And that's my question. So if the school year starts the last week of August, then theoretically the previous resolution should carry through any previous litigation with Mr. Smith. And then if we terminate it today, that would be saying that we're no longer going to use him moving forward into that school year.
Yeah, our school year doesn't start August.
Okay.
Yeah, it starts July 1.
Okay.
So I would recommend adopting it for not even a month, till August 8th, our next board meeting. Then at that point, we can have executive session. We can get the WESD lawyers in. They've been around longer than me, and they're up on a lot of the stuff. The vast majority of it started long before me. So they can be here and they can walk us through it. And then you can do what you want that day.
okay, I just want to avoid entering into any type of legal contract with Mr. Smith tomorrow.
I can say yes, that will not happen.
Right, thank you.
You were going down the list. Number 6 was Hart Wagner.
I believe they are one of the law firms, as well as Herring Long, 6 and 7, who are dealing with some of the lawsuits against the district.
Okay. I have a question with the ESD. I looked up the ESD lawyer, Lisa Freeley, and she is not listed as employee of the ESD. Is she recommended by the ESD? I mean, she's not on the WESD website. And so I was just curious, that is she employed by them, or they just use her because she's in Salem or close by?
She's been a long time employee of them. If she's retiring, but she's also working back. And so she's still theirs.
Oh.
Yeah.
The reason I asked that is because I read a letter that I found online that was signed by her, she wrote to Dr. Morlock and she was saying that the policy that the previous board adopted for, no Black Lives Matter and no gay pride in the classrooms, there would be no issues with that it would be legal. And that was, and so that concerns me, that she has written that to a superintendent who had asked her legal advice. The board passed that, and then we got into a little bit of controversy in the community. So, and I know that's before your time.
Yes, ma'am.
And so that concerns me about, maybe she and other areas of education law, she would give different advice. But
I really like the idea of having an executive session with attorneys to discuss the ins and outs of this, because it sounds like there's a lot of concerns and so I really like that idea, Dr. Phillips. And so
Could I ask too that there be other potential options that may be great for a school district to have that aren't currently on here?
I'd really like to have like one lawyer.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I mean, I could research them. I'm no expert. I would get, frankly, if I need a legal advice, I would either call Hungerford or the ESD and say, hey, if this isn't in your expertise, who is? And they would, probably give me some names, but this list is pretty exhaustive. It's yeah. I mean, Director Allen, I could try to find some names, but I wouldn't really know.
And I would presume that there's some mechanism that you find yourself in the course of a school year where you need a highly specialized attorney who's not on this list that could you could bring it to the board and, make a case for the reason that the board would want to enter into a contract. So it wouldn't shut the door on other attorneys in specialized fields of law.
Yeah, for instance, if, we have land, the district owns land out on Wilsonville Road and for a school someday. And if we ever needed to get into work on making sure it's zoned appropriately or whatever it might be, and dealing with neighbors and what have you, then there's probably a land attorney that makes a lot more sense than Lisa Freely.
Mhm.
So.
Yeah, to your question, so one of the questions I had was, I think OSBA is going to give us a training on their website. They have a lot of attorneys listed that they use for school districts across the state. And they have, litigation, contract, policy attorneys. And so that would be one place. If I was going to try to look, I would maybe start there with the Oregon School Boards Association. So, back to our motion. So.
I'll reword it.
Okay.
I move that we temporarily for 1 month, or until the next board meeting in August 8th, adopt resolution 2024-03 with an executive session to discuss further legal review next time.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any other further discussion? Then call for the question. All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries 7-0. Okay. Our next item is resolution. Let's see, get it right. And the signatures for the building level student body accounts. And we had the ones that were previous. And 2 people have been removed and other people have been put on because of different job descriptions, I presume. Any questions about this? Heather, do you have any comments? Is your name on that?
The only thing that I will share with this is a lot of times attendance has more to do with who is a signer and who is not. So when we're looking for people who are reliably going to be here so that there's a checks and balance of who's signing checks and who isn't, we try to pick people who are frequently in the building and not away from the building so that we're not waiting on payment of bills so that we can get signatures. So.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve this?
Yeah, I'll move that the Newburgh School District Board of Directors approve and designate the depository signatures for fiscal year 2023-2024 as listed.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, the motion has been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? If not, then we'll call for the question. All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries 7-0. Okay, we are down to OSBA.
No, sorry, we have Wolfer. He wanted to talk.
Oh, yes, we have, yes, James, I'm sorry. You asked for a new added to the agenda.
Yeah, so if I could have the floor, I just want to read something followed by a motion for discussion. So I know I ran my campaign. I was elected on the promise of fiscal responsibility and integrity. I was elected 2 months ago, along with 4 others here, many of whom also campaigned on similar issues. The voters of Newburgh spoke pretty loudly on those issues. They wanted change and they wanted integrity and transparency. As mentioned in at least one of the public comments tonight, there are some issues with how the policy KABA parental bill rights was passed. It was crafted by an outgoing director, the same director that authored previous unconstitutional policies that got us in so much hot water in the first place. It was passed with many of those issues that were rejected in the election, but was pushed through anyway during a work session. As far as I can tell, there was no actual first reading. It was the first reading was during a policy committee meeting, and the second reading was done during a consent agenda about 3 to 4 days before the author's term was over. There was no public comment, and additionally, there was several asterisks and amendments added to it. Such as permitted by Oregon state law in section 2A, and a statement of severability that if any provision of this policy is found to be illegal, unconstitutional, otherwise unenforceable, the remaining portions of the policy shall remain in effect. To me, that shows that the author knew that this policy would be controversial, much like his previous ones, and could likely result in more expensive litigation that we just cannot afford. To be clear, I do believe parental involvement and parental rights are paramount, and we have several policies in place that protect those. However, this policy was passed with, in my opinion, was clear political motivations as a vanity project by an outgoing controversial and polarizing figure 3 days before his term ended. So I would like to make the following motion. I would like to rescind policy KAB immediately, and then have more thorough public input and competent legal review in the future for any future Bill of Rights to make sure that we are in compliance with the law and accountable to the public.
Is there a second to this motion?
I second.
Discussion.
I don't know if there's any plan to replace this, but I certainly hope there is. I think that I wasn't here when this was voted on, but albeit it was done at the end of the term, this was an ongoing project involving community outreach on 2 separate occasions with input from them. So I would just take that into account when you vote on this motion. There's a lot of people, not just in this community, but across the nation, that want to have parental rights codified in a document such as this. The belief, as you probably know, one of the beliefs in this was to consolidate some of those other things. Anyhow, just keep in mind that as you vote on this, this was an outreach to the community on 2 separate occasions.
I will say I can agree. I think that as part of that, I'm okay with having discussions in the future. I know it was a process with the community, and if that's what the community and the board wants to do in the future, I'm happy to do so. My bigger problems, as mentioned, were some of the ways in which it was pushed through at the end, and it felt like one person's version of that rather than the community's. So I'm happy to revisit that in the future with some more public comment and some more competent legal review after we've gone through what we just discussed with attorneys. I just want to make sure that when and if anything is codified, that it is something that is not going to get us in more hot water.
Well, and I appreciate your comments about the community engagement. And I was part of both of those, but it didn't feel that the community continued to be engaged. It just sort of came to a standstill with this particular director's desire, which he said in a meeting that that's the last thing he wanted to have happen before end of his term. So I think we missed the end piece, bringing it back to that community, those folks that were super engaged, and looking at is what had been presented, does it align with what those community members had been discussing? And I'm concerned for what our community is saying. I have no concern for what the national dialogue is about parental bill of rights. So if we do move forward to re-engage the community in a more meaningful way, I would support that.
Well, I believe that there was an article also done on this policy, and I think it was presented quite well in the OSBA and through the graphic. And I don't see the policy being really controversial or anything, any lawsuits. I think we had it all run by, looking at it and discussing it with Scott, and it's pretty basic. I mean, there's nothing, I don't understand what the controversy would be with what's written in it, because it's pretty just self-explanatory, and it just gives everybody just a space to go to where it's all together in one document. So if you've read it, it's just giving, the parents rights over their kids' education. So.
Well, there's a lot of policy that is written, and we in the community meeting discussed that they're all over the board. And then could we have a document that would bring folks back and say, and I think we discussed parental engagement might be a more reasonable term than Bill of Rights. But that's a sort of a moot point. The article in the Newburgh Graphic, I think did a good job of reflecting what the board did, but it does not tell me that the board did that in the right chain of events, and whether it was in a consent agenda or, how it was in its second reading. I just didn't feel like that was real transparent.
So my questions about it mostly were, who is the acting mechanism if a parent asks for finding out the instruments used for testing, or what materials are being used? It didn't seem super clear. Is that the teacher? Is it come down to you? Does it? I think there's certain things that clarity in the policy would be good. The other question I had, and I don't know, were the redundancies removed from the other policies throughout our school policy ledger, or was this added in without those effectively being taken out? I wasn't clear when reading that.
And Scott, could you give us information on that?
So going through this process, we did take community input, as we've stated, and we've taken a look to, I think, to answer more directly to your question, Director Allen. I don't think the redundancies have been taken out. I do believe that there is some overlap with this policy versus the policies that we had in place prior to. But with that being said, I think the concept behind it was trying to put into one place an overarching view of the policies that we have in place under one policy. And that was my takeaway as I sat and worked through this process, that was the concept, so that I could go as a parent that here's a policy right here, and here are the expectations. But again, the clarity portion of it, if there's a concern on one of those steps involved, who would you as a parent then reach out to? And that isn't specifically laid out. Go ahead.
Be an AR.
Yeah, I was about to say that, but so under policies, we have policies, and then we also have administrative rules or regulations, which are ARs. And typically policies come before the board. Those are board policies. Those are yours. ARs falls to the superintendent. So your board policy in general concept is at 10,000 foot level, and then the ARs at the ground level. So if we wanted an AR to lay out more specifically, if this came up or that came up, who then does that as a district, that's where that would land or that would lie. So it's something for your consideration as well.
I would just say that to Director Wolfer's point, the idea that the redundancies weren't taken out, with that being the goal, it just gives the perception that it was hastily done, that there was a goal to get it done, which is fair, lack of time. But it would be nice to make that more clear, make sure that it aligns with, the goals of the community, knowing that it wasn't given a public comment in the public forum rather than the group that met. So in that way, I support that idea, just to make sure that we're not just adding to a list of policies. We can make that clear for everyone.
Can I make a recommendation? Most of this, last time I read it, which was not the approved version, so I haven't seen the approved version, was a lot of it was during the mix of the school year is going to be where the most impacted part of this Bills of Rights, right? Like what's coming up, testing, et cetera, right? I want to know more information about it. Right now, we're in a lull. We're not in school. We're not in session right now, except maybe, summer school. Is instead of actually trying to redact it now, can we have that as a future agenda item to discuss this more further? Also get the approved version of that ruling or that policy, I guess. And so we can then have a better discussion about it, because right now it's kind of hypothetical. You're bringing in your perspective. We're all bringing our perspectives, but like I don't have it in black and white in front of me right now to discuss. Two, I'd like to add on a point of my concern too is I'm all for parental rights. My wife definitely had to have our, rights of giving, making sure that our kids are, the school is doing the right thing for our kids, right? I don't care what we call it. I think parents already have the rights. It's just, you have to speak out and you'll get them. the concern I have though is on the flip side of it is like, and I don't know if this is the policy part of it or it's the AR part of it. I have a concern about maybe the waterfall of somebody requesting it and the AR part of it or whatever, then all of a sudden falls on the teacher to now have to take time out of their day to say, this is what I'm doing. If there's an impact to teacher time, they're already overbooked, overworked. That's more of a concern I have. And again, I don't know if that's more the policy side or more the AR side, but I want to make sure that's protected or reach out to them or the union to talk about the impact on this potential outcome of this policy. So.
Yeah, so that's why the motion I make is to rescind it now, so that it's not, so the law of the land, so to speak. It's been in effect for 2 weeks. The impact is minimal. I think we go back to what we had and then we keep talking about this. It's obvious it's something our community wants to discuss. So that's the second part, is that we, at a later time, we review it through legal counsel as a board, all of us, and then we figure out what is the best way for it to move forward. But as it stands, it doesn't feel right the way it's written, and it doesn't feel right the way it was done.
Thank you. I have this comment that ties in with Jeremy is one of the things at the board meeting when it was passed, a member asked, can you see the library books? Well, they're all online. It's just like the public library. You can see every library book in the whole school district. Go to the school library and you can see every library book. There's nothing hidden there. But my concern is what Jeremy has, is the district doesn't have a good policy for if a teacher, someone is concerned about a certain title or a book, what happens next? And so I found procedures from the North Clackamas School District, Salem Kaiser, where I work, and there's all of these, what happens so it doesn't, the burden doesn't go to the librarian, so that the process in place if a parent is concerned. And that's what I think is missing in the policy. And that's what I think the burden goes to, and having goes to the teacher or the librarian, and in having a tight policy with that in place protects the teacher, the staff, and also enables the parent to have the correct direction to give their concern.
With that one, can I restate my motion?
Yes, please do.
I move to rescind policy KABA and reopen the community discussion with the school board over a future parental rights policy.
Is there a second?
I second.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Right. Aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, 4, 2 against, abstain. 1 absence. Okay, the motion carries. So we will be putting this on our agenda for the next month, on August 8th, to discuss or have a point of policy committee, which would be very good.
Yeah, if I could just ask that we, get to it quickly so
Yes.
that we can keep the momentum that had been happening and do something productive and positive for the parents and students.
Just in closing, I agree that parents have the right. I'm not against a parental policy, but I think it needs to be clean so that we don't have redundancies, policy that was already there and you have a new policy. And then what happens if somebody wants to do it? Who's responsible? The responsibility, I don't think is tied up very tightly in the policy. So thank you. Okay. OSBA training.
have a break.
Yeah. Okay. 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 So do we need to dismiss for a break? Okay.
Madam Chairman, I actually would suggest a slight modification to this, to the agenda, maybe putting the board and superintendent comments first before the OSBA training, because I think then the audience can maybe, they don't have to sit through anything or go back and watch it. We can maybe do the comments.
Sure.
And then, I don't know, just suggesting a little change of procedure and then the break.
Okay.
So.
So is that okay with you? To give you comment? Okay, superintendent's comments first, and then we will have the boards first. Okay. Okay, so do we do it in any particular order?
Well, I just want to welcome you all to the board, all of you guys, and thanks for everybody coming and showing up. It's nice to have your support. And also I wanted to let you guys know, I don't know if you've noticed that the murals are taking place on Edwards and it's really looking cool. I go for walks a lot, so I get to see all the progress in that. And I believe on August 31st, we're planning a ribbon cutting for the 2 new buildings and the murals. And I think there's going to be a school open house that night. So that should just be a really fun event. So, yeah.
Thank you.
I just want to thank the community for those who voted for us, those who didn't, those who are here. Just want to thank the community in general. I want to thank all my fellow board members. I'm looking forward to working with all of you. Those I ran with, those who are already on here, just looking forward to working with all of you. Looking forward to agreeing and disagreeing, but ultimately I think that all of us, we've had some discussions, and I think all of us agree that we just want to do what's right for the students in our community. So I'm looking forward to the work that we're all going to do together. So thank you.
Thank you all for being here and everyone watching. I'm excited to get to be a part of this and work with all of you. I think we got an exciting couple of years coming up. I do want to respond really quick to some of those public comments that I personally have no agenda coming in to push any pet projects or push someone out right before a school year. It seems a little crazy and like a terrible idea. I'm excited to work with Dr. Phillips. And yeah, I look forward and I hope that any and all of you will reach out with any comments or concerns you might have for us, and know that I will gladly reach out and talk to you as well.
Well, I'm super happy to be here finally after all these months of campaigning. And I just want to follow up on your comment about the folks who are worried about Dr. Phillips' position. It is just like when Dr. Morlock was fired by the board. I think a bad form to come in and fire a superintendent. So for those of you who are worried about sending letters in to the next board meeting, it is not on my agenda to be firing Dr. Phillips. So thanks for your concern.
I'll echo that. Director Bridges, it's not on my agenda either to fire Dr. Phillips. I'm quite happy with Dr. Phillips. He's made himself readily available along with the rest of his staff, doing excellent work. I think we've laid a great foundation. If you've been paying attention to the presentations from the different staff that he's hired into the positions, I think we've got a bright future ahead that's going to positively impact our students. I would like to say congratulations to Dr. Phillips on purchasing a permanent house here in Newburgh. Congratulations to you and your family on that. We look forward to many years ahead of you being part of our community. And I'd just like to say thank you to the staff who's not taking the summer off. We have classified and licensed staff still out there in the buildings doing great work. So I know last year or the year before we did a barbecue for summer school. So maybe we can engage on that. A great opportunity to get out there and meet some of the staff that are working and doing good things during the summer. So yeah, I think we've done a lot of that stuff. And I hope that we continue that going forward, especially the concerts both inside and outside the building have been awesome to see. Our students really strut their stuff on the stuff that they're learning. So yeah, thank you.
I didn't know what I was going to actually say today. I will basically common message. Thank you for the community for voting for me and putting me in this position. I do think I will bring some unique values and insights into this. And no, I just want to make sure it's clear that because my wife is a teacher, there are sometimes I abstain or stay out of discussions. So I'll just put that on the records now of why I may do that in the future. I am looking forward to having a very good working relationship with this board and with Director Powell and DeHart. I think we can make the great strides we made even better and put us on the top of the map for Oregon schools and districts. And I'll also just be on the same bandwagon. I'm not in here to come fire people. I just want to make it better. There will be areas we do want to focus on. But there's nothing on my, on my radar to go in and fire people specifically, and or Dr. Phillips. So thank you.
Thank you for everybody for coming and for people who are watching online. And it's an honor to serve on the board. And I wanted to say that, my first priority is students. And then I also have, of course, a heart for teachers, since I was one for many years. And I really look forward to interacting with the community, and I will answer emails. We just received an envelope with our district email tonight. And so we will be available for emails from that will be on the school district website. And so please feel free to contact me and share any concerns you have, because I really believe in transparency and open dialogue, and that we can work together as a community. So thank you.
All right. Usually I brag on students at this time, and we don't have that. So quickly brag on our staff. We do have great staff working summer school right now. We have great staff working in this building all summer long. I appreciate all they do. I appreciate the new board, appreciate the old board. I think we can do great things together. I'm excited about that. I have to admit, it was very awkward reading 8 emails that the majority of them were wondering. I believed you all, right? I mean, as you said, Deb, you were in my office, you talked to me. I listened to Nancy and James at the George Fox Forum. But it was a little weird reading those emails. So thank you. I look forward to being here and a lot of good work.
So with that in mind, we will temporarily adjourn for refreshments, and then we will have our OSBA training in about how many minutes? Yeah, how long's our break?
I mean,
Where's our trainer?
10 minutes.
10 minutes?
Yeah, 10 minutes. Okay. Thank you.
Just with the new ones?
Oh, sure.
Oh, all of them? Well, let's go new ones for now. Or when they come back.
They'll come back. We'll be back.
She wants to write an article.
I look forward to working with you.
Yeah, you as well. I'd like to see
Get queued back up on.
Okay.
Yeah, you're
Okay.
good. We're good.
Okay, the Newburgh Public Schools, District 29J is back in session for Oregon School Boards Association training. And I don't know your name and I'm sorry, I didn't meet you. So can you introduce
That's
yourself,
okay. I'm
please?
Kristen Miles.
Okay, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. I've not met any of you yet. I've been here before, but it was years ago. So thanks for having me back. I'm Kristen Miles from the Oregon School Boards Association. A little bit about me before we start, so you know why I'm here. I've been with OSB for about 7 years, and prior to that, I was an administrator at Portland Public Schools for almost a decade. And I am a newly elected board member as well. So I'm a board member in Tigard Tualatin, and it's my first year. Just got sworn. Thank you very much. So I am with you in your newness to the board, many of you. So tonight, I know you've had already a little bit of a lengthy board meeting. Tonight, we're going to go over basic roles and responsibilities. We're going to do this, though, not as me mostly talking at you, but through some scenarios. I'm also going to present to you some research-based best practices because there is research out there that says this is how boards can positively impact student learning. And we're going to talk about the ways in which you do that. A lot of that is in collaboration with each other. A lot of that is in collaboration with your superintendent. And so we're going to go through those things, and then we'll talk through, you know, as many scenarios as we have time to do, which sort of point out like, oh, what's the board's role in this? What are the issues with this? And I'll keep it for a couple of hours, but I know that we start losing our best thinking after about that long, and I know that it'll get late. So we'll keep it to that. And I will want to leave you with some tools, just some ideas for tools for further collaboration. This is meant to be a dialogue between us. If at any time you want to stop and talk about something that is relevant to you, let's do that, because the most important thing is that this is the best use of your time. So with that, we'll go ahead and get going. Did you want me to go ahead in advance, or do you want? Okay. So I would love, now I can see all of your names. We don't have to necessarily do that, but I would love to know your time on the board. Now I know that, you know, some of you, it is a matter of days, hours, but just, you know, your quick time on the board and what you hope to get out of tonight. So let's see. So Nancy, can I start with you over there? You know, I'm really good at picking on people who just took a bite. I'm so sorry.
Nancy Woodward, and what, an hour and a half on the Newburgh School Board. And what do I hope to get from this training? I'll just get the basics of how to be a good board member and responsibilities, and so that competency.
Great. Thank you.
Renee Powell, and I've been a board member for 2 years, and yeah, hoping to maybe glean some new information for tonight. Thanks.
James Wolfer. This is my first day. And I hope to learn. I think there's just, I don't know what I don't know. And even just going through stuff tonight, it was like, man, I almost wish we had done this before we took effect. So that's, I'm just hoping to learn what I don't know.
Yeah.
Saul Allen, a couple of hours. I'd say what I'm hoping to learn is roles and responsibilities outside of the public meetings. What else we can expect, our other board decisions and those kind of processes.
I'm Deb. I'm new here, the new kids on the block. You know, just I've been on a lot of boards, and so I have a lot of board experience and knowledge, but specific to school boards and the uniqueness of a school board. So I just really want to do the best job that I can, and that helps me to have more information about roles and responsibilities, and really how to be a good steward of the resources for the kids.
Hi, I'm Trevor Dehart. I've been on the board for 2 years. Just hoping to continue to learn kind of best practices. You know, what how can we as a board be the most effective working together in the benefit of the students and staff? Yeah.
Thank you.
Jeremy Hayden, board member 2 hours ago. And last in the line, I don't know if I have anything new to add to this, what to hope to get out of this training. I agree with everybody, so good luck.
Thank you. Good luck to all of us. Dr. Phillips, would you want to add anything that you would like to get out of tonight as well? Or what you'd like your board to get?
Yeah, I think some clarity on roles and responsibilities.
Yeah.
I think some new board members think they know the job, but they very well don't.
Right.
And some new soups think they know the job.
Yeah.
And they don't.
Yeah.
And so there's some very clear roles and responsibilities, and I think it'd be good to have those clear.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I say to every single board, no one knows what a board member does, and neither did you before you got on the board. And I think, you know, you'll find that we tend to think about, and the community tends to think about board members like they do individual legislators, that you run as sort of an individual person that is operating, you know, maybe with an individual agenda, but really what you are coming to do is to be a team. You make your decisions at the board table. You are coming together collaboratively. Of course, you're individually elected, but you're all here to make one decision each time. And that collaboration that you have together is really important. And we'll talk about like how that advances student learning. So thank you for sharing that. There we go. Anybody heard of Simon Sinek here? Start with why. We talk a lot about our what's and our how's, how we do things, what we do. And really one of the things that we also try to talk about at OSBA is, but why are you here? What caused you to run for the board? Why are you here? What is the heart that you put into this? And I will just open this up, not every single person, unless you all want to answer, but I know that this can be personal and private too. But if anybody would like to share, you're mostly sharing with your colleagues. Why are you here? I'll just put that question out there. And if anybody would like to talk about why you're on the board, that would be welcome.
I'll start. I have a 3.5-year-old and an 8-week-old. So
Congratulations.
thank you. I also work in a different school district. And so this is where I chose to have my family, where I want to live and where I want to raise my kids. And so I just wanted to make sure that school district was healthy for them and be a part of that decision-making process.
Okay.
I have had kids who've gone through the district and could be, I don't know, starting on the Real Housewives of New York new season or something, but decided I felt like there was a lot of discourse in our community and felt maybe there was an opportunity for me to help sort of mitigate that and be a part of a more positive board. And so as a 20-year, I've been engaged with the school district for 20 years as a volunteer, as a parent, through work. And I love the school district. And so I want to be a part of moving forward and bringing some renewed positive energy to the board and the community. And I'm really happy with the board members that we have. And I'm really looking forward to, bringing some healing with Trevor and Renee's help as well as more seasoned board members.
Oh, I was just wanted to say that it's really nice that we do have you here, have this training, because when Trevor and I came on board 2 years ago, we didn't have any training at all. We were just kind of thrown in with the wolves. And so it's, and just like deers in a headlight, like, what do we do? And so it's nice to have this support, and you guys should be really thankful that you guys have this, because this, I think, is a really great head start for you guys that we did not have. So.
My why is really, I've had 4 kids go through the district. 3 have graduated. 1's a junior, niece and nephew, currently high school, middle school. I've seen the ebbs and flows of the school district over the last 10 to 20 years, because as a parent, you start to see that. And then as a community and a spouse of a teacher, there's a lot of the community was hurt the last couple of years. The teacher community was kind of hurt, parents, everybody, and I just wanted to offer what I can to maybe bring us back together. So that's the way.
My why is because I've been in education, and I think public education is something to be treasured. And I think it really is important in a community to have good schools. Each student only gets one shot at their education and their parents. And so I felt like my experience and my own kids went to Newburgh Public Schools and had a great education many years ago, and that it was a opportunity for me to give back and learn also, because a lot of things have changed. And so my why is really for students and their parents.
Thank you.
I have two kids, 7 and 4. And I recently got my public policy degree. I've always said that I think that it's important to give back. I think that groups like this are really important. And I know that oftentimes it can be a bit of a challenge to volunteer your time to do things that aren't necessarily fun. So I like the idea of being able to show my kids that it's important to do things, even if they're tough, even if they might not be a high paying job, that there are really important things to do. And I'm excited to get a chance to learn, to know what it actually looks like to be on a school board and see other opportunities like that.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Oh, sure, absolutely.
These might start better. Didn't realize we were gonna have an available one today. Red is,
Great, thank you. Okay. Thank you. I'm going to ask you 3 questions, and this is not an everybody, but this is, a group discussion. Why do you think the board matters in general? Why do you think the culture of the board matters? And why do you think your relationship with the superintendent matters? And we can answer all of these as a group. But what is it about the board that matters? Because at one point that was a question. Like before there was research on why the board matters, there was a question. Does the board matter at all? So what are your thoughts about why does the board matter?
I guess after 2 years, I like what you said about, you don't know. I feel like
Nobody
should be, you don't know what you're getting into. Nancy, you said, your kids went through many years ago. I went through the Newburgh School District many years ago. It's a different time. I mean, not just in Newburgh, but across the nation. But looking at this, right, we're here to set policy. Our only employee is the superintendent. So having a good working relationship with the superintendent is invaluable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because he's the one carrying out the policies that you're setting.
Mhm.
And as representatives of your community, you should be in tune with what your community wants to see in this public institution of education. And so certainly, these meetings are all public. So I think it's important, if you want to be your best and do the best you can for our students, you got to have a good working relationship with your board. And so
Mhm.
hopefully that's what we've got here moving forward.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was gonna echo some of that. I mean, education, kids, a lot of us have kids or we've been a kid. That's why people move a lot of times to a big reason a lot of people will move or get real estate is the schools, things like that. So it's really a cornerstone of our community.
Mhm.
And so yeah, I think I'll echo what Director DeHart said is if we're with the board culture, just getting along. I think that's very important. I think that, you know, we need to be able to agree to disagree sometimes and be able to work towards a common goal. And then with the superintendent, one thing I said, you mentioned at the George Fox Forum, but I'll echo what I said there was, I'm not an expert in a lot of these things. So we hire an expert, and that's why we need to have a good relationship with someone that we can trust, that, you know, knows more than me. I'm not a doctor. I don't have a doctorate. And so that's I think why it matters, you know, that he's our employee, and, you know, he needs to trust us to have his back, so that he can do his job, because we can't do his job.
Thank you. Great.
I would just, on the board itself, if you don't have a board, then one person does the decision making for a larger community. And this way that power is shared among hopefully a community that can have discussions and make decisions that are more equitable for everyone.
Thank you.
I'll just add sort of a point about the relationship with the superintendent is, I think it's important for us to know what lane we're supposed to be in, and making sure that we aren't trying to do things that are beyond the scope of what the board's business is. And because I think that's probably more difficult for a superintendent when the board's just off sort of doing a lot of things. So understanding our roles and responsibility from that perspective, to me, seems like it would be very valuable to the superintendent.
Yeah.
But the culture, I think, builds trust in the community, or diminishes trust. So it depends on what that culture is. And I think that's very important as to what the culture of this board will be.
Yeah.
Moving forward.
Are we open to answer any of these questions, or just?
Yeah, they're any of them, if you want to weigh in on any of them. We're not doing one at a time.
Okay. I'll have to bring maybe my corporate America hat on. The board culture it's a top down thing. Doesn't matter if it's all the companies I've been with, it's either the board of directors or it's the representative, like the CEO, which in this case would be Dr. Phillips. They set the tone for the company, and they set the culture. And if the culture is not a culture of growth and opportunity, and it's about, you know, whatever, and it's not anything except for that, then you're gonna have you're gonna have people sway away. You're gonna have coups. You're gonna have whatever you want to think of it. You're not gonna have people following the CEO or the board, and that's why we should have good board culture, and how it can affect everybody from us to Dr. Phillips, to his employees, to the teachers, to classified staff, to the students. I mean, the stuff that we do, and this kind of goes just to law of the land too, what parents do even kids replicate what their parents do, what adults do. That's kind of the same thing here. Like, they're going to replicate what we do. So if we set a good culture and a good tone, then everybody else will eventually, if they don't like it, they're going to leave. If they like it, they're going to join in and have more harmonious, school district.
Thank you. Thank you. You're hitting on a lot of the things that we're going to talk about that are actually research-based, and we'll dive into those a little more in depth later. This is really hard to see, but we have a tool that's called Forecast 5 that draws state reported data. And so when I say this is a very small picture of demographics in your district. So we say, who are your students? Who are your kids, and how do you know? This is racial demographics. There's free and reduced lunch up there. There's free lunch. There's special ed. It's reported to a certain extent. This is publicly reported data, and this is all Forecast 5 has. Right now, you can see the gray bars are the overall trend of enrollment, total enrollment. And so you will get a lot more information about this, from your superintendent and his team. But one of the things that we encourage you to keep knowing and keep asking is, who are your kids and how do you know? Just like you would ask, who is the community that you serve and who do you serve? And who were you elected to serve? And so this is a snapshot of one aspect of your kids, but who are your kids and how are you making decisions when you make decisions for your kids? So just, again, that's really hard to see, but just to share. So this is a tool that I have. Yeah. And I mean, all of this is publicly reported data. It's just that I've got this dashboard that sits on top of all of that, I can send you this slide so you can see it later. I mean, I can send you the whole thing, but yeah, of course. Oh, I skipped a good one. Go back. Go back. Okay. Briefly. And I know that a lot of you are, the vast majority of you are new, but I also know that you're engaged and have been engaged. I would love for you to talk to me a little bit about, first, what do you think is going really well in this district? What are your current successes? What do you want to build on? What's going well?
As a district as a whole?
Yeah, district as a whole. That you are excited about as a board member.
Well, what I'm excited about the board, as a board member myself, is the fact that we've turned the corner, and I know COVID kind of played in it, but we're turning a corner. We're going up now on our test scores. I know there was a comment about the legitimacy of that number right now, but I also take it for what it's worth. I think it's a great opportunity, and we can keep moving forward. So,
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of great things going on. I think, like I alluded to earlier, I think Dr. Phillips and his staff are focused on our students and student achievement, and his staff has set high goals. I think realistic goals. It's going to take a lot of work, so I think we're moving in the right direction. We're really talking about student achievement and how we can best serve them wherever they're at, and a lot of great ideas. I think that we need to continue building on that, right? That's why we're here. And I think in addition to students, right, you support your staff because they're the ones in the trenches, doing the work at each one of these 7 schools. So it's a multi-pronged approach that we're taking, and I think that we're heading in the right direction. I'm excited to see what the new board can do to support the superintendent and help drive him, through that lens of student achievement. I think that we have a lot of talent here, and I think the possibilities are endless. It just seems to me, I think anybody through their own frame of reference, compares and contrasts where we were. I always do that, thinking about where I was when I went through the school district here and where we're at now with my kids going through the school district. And, I just see a lot of areas of improvement. I think, in a time where it seems like we're lowering our expectations, we have an opportunity to set high expectations and help those students achieve that, give them the tools to do it, and give them the confidence to do it, right? Let them know that, they can be better than they think they can, So, anyhow, that's my thoughts.
Thank you. One more. And then we'll move on.
I think it's been great with all the current construction and stuff going on. We have a lot of just exciting new school buildings and what that's gonna, the opportunities that are gonna open up, like at the high school, we have a new shop and just all this new area for the kids and of course, I think it seems like every school has something new going on. So that's kind of exciting, and that's going to be great for the next school years to come. So, and a new school being built in Dundee. So
thank you.
Yeah.
And we'll do a couple of these too. What are some challenges that you are facing right now?
I mean, the big elephant in the room is that the community is deeply divided. So that, I think that's just going to be something we're gonna have to work through.
Mhm.
I think, I mean,
Yeah.
like I said earlier, I think we can, as a board, agree to disagree on things. I think throughout our terms, we're all gonna, I mean, it's gonna be varied and when we're gonna agree or disagree with each other. But I think as long as we can model that for, as a board, then I think that that can model for the community. But
Mhm.
that's a big one. I think that it's just a deeply divided community at the moment. So.
Yeah. Sure.
I think too, some of our challenges is social media. Some of the kids made a T-shirt and little stickers that said pause before you post, which was, I think, a great example to all of us to just stop before you post stuff, because I think that's what happened tonight with all the firing of Dr. Phillips, because there was a big thing going around social media from a group saying that that you guys were going to come in and fire the superintendent, all the stuff that you guys were going to do. So then it made the other side get all excited and stuff. So I think if we can somehow get those voices more, calm down on social media and everything, I think that it will really help our district a lot.
Yeah.
So.
One more.
I think one of the challenges are to be focused on minority communities, especially Hispanic community, because if you look at test scores and things, how can we really focus and be more inclusive in communities that maybe be a little bit out of the mainstream? And it can be, race or gender identity that all students feel included. And
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I want to say, and again, I told you that I'm about we're going to talk about some research-based best practices. Nothing that I bring you is, oh, Kristen from OSBA thinks this is great, or OSBA made this up. Everything that we do is steeped in research, and we bring that to you because this is what research says is the best way to impact student achievement. And some of that is synthesized in this very wordy sentence here about collaborative governance. It is really about what we're going to talk about is about effective partnerships, about building a culture of trust and respect between each other and with your superintendent, and collective responsibility, accountability, and support. And so we'll talk about like how that manifests on the board between yourselves and your superintendent. Okay, we're going to talk through some scenarios. And I'm going to invite you to, I'll read these out and then you can read these just depending on how you learn best. So here's one, and then we'll talk through this. During a recent board meeting, a board member rejected the proposed vision statement because it included the phrase all means all. They indicated that it was impossible for each student to achieve at a high level. Many students do not have the support at home necessary for them to be successful, said the board member. It is an impossible goal and should not be approved by the board. What are your thoughts about this?
I have a thought. Well, first of all, it's a vision statement, so that's aspirational in nature in terms of what you hope to achieve. And if your goal isn't to try your hardest to engage all, then I think you're failing out of the gate. So I think it's an aspirational statement. And it's there are other metrics that lead towards your vision that help you with that.
Okay.
I want to say the don't let perfection stop progress kind of idea in that same way. It's an impossible goal. I think that when you say something's impossible, you then limit the ability for that to be realized by someone else, whether or not it is currently plausible.
Okay. Any other thoughts on this? I ask you this because there's a piece of research that shows that the single belief shared by all board members that all students can and will learn positively impacts student achievement, that one belief. And that seems sort of like one of those this is self-evident, or that's kind of simple, or why would anybody believe otherwise? But if you think about the opposite, if the belief that, if only we didn't have those kids, or if only, we didn't have to serve those kids, or if only, these kids probably won't get there, then that impacts how you make decisions. It impacts how you want to allocate resources. It impacts the policies you look at. It impacts the programs you may look at. At the board level, you're doing these big governance jobs, right? You're adopting the budget, you're adopting policy, you're adopting program. And so having that belief shared by all of you that all students can be successful at the level that they're going to be successful. Like how does each student define success? But that all students can learn, just the learning part, positively impacts student achievement. So, and that's research-based. So that's an important one to remember, just that simple belief. I'm going to skip that one for the interest of time because we just talked about that. The next thing we're going to do is talk about some standards. I just wanted to show you this quick slide about, and you don't have to absorb all this, about the research and some prominent researchers. There's been a lot of study in the past 30-ish years on boards. And the essential question was asked about that many years ago, do boards matter? Because the assumption was that the board just kind of sat on top of things and kind of voted for things, but that really the thing that mattered most, and we know that it does, is the teacher in the classroom, right? Teacher in the classroom interacts with students every single day, teacher collective efficacy, the way that teachers believe in each other, those kinds of things. Teachers really, really matter to students. And the belief was that boards just didn't really matter. And so there was a bunch of research. There was research called the Lighthouse Project. That was sort of the seminal research that looked into this. And it was discovered that no, boards matter. The way that you model behavior, the way that you make decisions, the way that you interact with your superintendent and with each other, all of that actually impacts student learning and achievement. And so there's been a lot of research since then, books written, papers written, et cetera. And that has led us to some prominent practices that we're going to go through. So I'm going to go through 12 evidence-based standards of performance. And when you are working toward these things, you're going to positively impact student achievement. It doesn't mean you have to get them perfect. Nobody gets them perfect, because it would be really demoralizing to sit and think that, well, if we don't get these perfect, we're just, we might as well give up. But there's a researcher named Tom Alsbury, who is one of the prominent researchers in boards, and he specifically studies boards and then boards and superintendents. And so all of this research over these number of years have really led to these 12 standards. And so I want to talk about these and what they might look like for you. And so I'm going to stop at the end of each of these slides and ask you if any of this resonates or what this might look like for you on your board or in your district. So the first is that vision-directed planning. And this is really the one on which everything else sits. It's the question of, what do you want for your kids? How do you develop strategic priorities based on your overall vision for your students? When a student leaves Newburgh, what do you want them to have accomplished? What do you want them to have experienced here? And then how do you develop the strategic priorities underneath? This is big board work. It's collaborative. You involve your community. You partner with your superintendent, but this is the big strategic board work, is that vision-directed planning. That goes right along with community engagement. And I know that this is, something that, is a big deal for you right now, is working on community engagement. What does that look like right now? What will it look like in this next year? What will it look like going forward? That may be something that you as a board end up discussing. And all segments of the district are, your staff is your community, your students are your community, the community at large, your business partners are part of your community. And then of course there's, again, constituents at large, and working again, collaboratively with each other, but also with your superintendent and his team to determine what kind of community engagement gets you authentic relationships with your community, but then also authentic feedback that you can take to make decisions. I was here for I got here shortly before 6. So I heard a lot of your board meeting tonight, and I heard you discuss about, you had a discussion about how to get feedback. And so, focusing on that community engagement piece, again, all of these things measurably impact student achievement. So that community engagement piece is really important. Your effective leadership. So that focus and direction that is part of that vision directed planning. Again, setting those expectations to impact student learning. So having a student focus on those strategic priorities. And that last part says aligning authority and responsibility so that decisions can be made at the most local level. That is ensuring that your superintendent has the authority to make decisions, to delegate authority to his staff so that you're not in the weeds. There's a model of the board that I'm sure you've, heard talked about. You don't want to be in management. You want to be in governance, right? Governance is over the system. That is adopting a budget, that is adopting policy, that is adopting program, but it's not a rubber stamp board either, right? You also don't want to be just like, we'll get information and we'll just say it's fine. You want to be informed and making informed decisions so that you know what's happening in the district, you know what's going on, but you're not managing. And I always say it's not that you don't get to manage, you don't have to manage. You don't want to do any of that, right? You do not want to do that. And you don't get paid enough to do that either, right? Board member salaries, not very high. And so there's a balance between not just rubber stamping and not being in the weeds. It's that collaboration between you and your superintendent we're going to talk about as part of accountability. So that accountability piece is having high expectations for every student, which we just talked about, and holding the district accountable. So I don't know if you have a strategic plan or if that's something that you would enter into at some point. But if you are looking at, so for instance, I do a lot of strategic planning with a lot of districts. And there are times where I'll go in and there will already be one. It'll be this beautiful poster on the wall and it will have all these things on it. And I'll say, okay, great. Where did you end? Like, where are we right now? And nothing will have been measurable. And so it's completely nebulous as to where things ended. Like a very common pillar in strategic planning is community engagement. But how do you measure whether the community is engaged? Something has to be measurable. And so when you hold the system accountable, you have information that comes to you to say whether or not you've met goals. So one of in my opinion, the best parts of looking at your role in strategic visioning and determining those strategic priorities in collaboration, again, with your superintendent and his team, is then determining how you're going to collect information on that to follow your goals and to follow the progress on that along the way. So that's the monitoring plan. So for instance, you've got one of your pillars is student achievement. And you've got a number of metrics underneath there. All of those things and the details of those, your superintendent and his team do, right? It's not the board. You're not the educational experts. You hire an educational leader to do those details. But then you as a board get to say, okay, let's work together to figure out what kind of information comes to us and when, so that we can make progress tracking the progress on the goal, so that we can see throughout the year, where are we? There may be data that comes at certain times of the year and we won't know it until October, or we won't have this until January. But building those things into your board calendar as you go so that you're tracking your strategic priorities, really important. Anything on here resonate or that you have questions about?
Is that in our?
The basic roles and responsibilities notebook? No, but I will send you this. You can have this presentation if you'd like it. Okay. The next four are using data for continuous improvement. And data does not just mean student achievement data. It means all kinds of information. If you've got financial priorities, there's a lot of different kinds of information that go along with financial priorities. If you've got priorities that involve facilities, obviously there's another kind of financial or another kind of set of data that would go along there. But it's having data from multiple sources that let you know and that you're familiar with. What are we measuring? How do we know? What kinds of things are being tracked? And how do we as a board have the information that we need in order to make decisions that are informed? Cultural responsiveness, recognizing that diversity comes in all forms. And part of your job is to reduce and eliminate barriers to access for your students. And so ensuring that that your students feel welcomed, applying different perspectives. You all bring different perspectives to the board. If there only needed to be one perspective on the board, there would only be one board member. So you all bring life experiences, you all bring different perspectives to the board, and you apply those also when you're making decisions for your students. Setting a culture and climate of expectations, again, that all students can learn. But this is also where you model professional and respectful relationships. You do set that tone. You do model the way. One of the things when I'm asked to help boards like craft a little thing that they read right in front of community input during their board meetings, I always write in there, we model the way for our kids. And so encouraging that kind of dialogue during public comment is that we all model the way for our kids. And you do that as well, at the board table, outside of board meetings as well. And we'll talk about communicating outside of board meetings as part of our little, be careful about public meeting stuff. But your relationship with each other is a matter of public interest, and folks will watch you, and the rest of the district will watch that relationship as well. And I say this to every board across the state, that is something that you get to do, is model professional relationships. Being a learning organization, supporting reflection, discovery, success at all levels, encouraging professional development for yourselves. You're doing some of that tonight, for your superintendent, for all staff, knowing that you can lead from where you sit, and everybody can, but encouraging that self-renewing continuous improvement cycle in all parts of the district. Any questions or thoughts here? Good.
Especially struck, and I've thought this, Scott and Steve about this. The top one there, using data for continuous improvement.
Mm-hmm.
CI is one of the things that I was involved in as an engineer. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's got applicability everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, professionally, institutions, whatever it is. Yeah, so I think it's very important as we move forward and we develop our strategic plans. I think it's important that we make sure that they're measurable, that we are measuring, that we have a cadence to reporting, and that it's driving accountability.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that means being able to change what we're doing, refining, continually improving our processes and procedures and stuff like that. So we're getting the most from the taxpayer dollar and the most for our students and their success throughout their school K through 12 time, and then equip them for the real world.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Last set, systems thinking. There's an integrated view of your system. Not that you won't provide different things for different schools. If you're thinking of equitable allocation of resources, different schools may need different things at different times, but looking at the system as a whole. And one of the examples I use is like not taking a problem from here and putting it over here. But it's also about partnerships. So where can you leverage resources and knowledge from other partnerships, other relationships that you have, or that your superintendent has with other districts, local partnerships, national partnerships, sometimes other programs, collaboration at all levels. But again, thinking of the system as a whole, when you're making those big governance decisions, you're making them for a whole system. The next one I really like because it's about problem solving in creative ways. So innovation and creativity. Sometimes it feels like you don't really get to do this because you are constrained by things like public meeting law, and you can't, talk in a quorum outside of board meetings, and there are decisions that, the vast majority of your decisions are going to be made at the board table, and the vast majority of your tough discussions are going to be there too. But, one of the examples that I like to use is, when we were in CDL, when we were in comprehensive distance learning, the schools were governed, districts were governed differently. Boards had to do different things. Superintendents had to do different things. Teachers had to do different things. Like, that was innovative and creative. We had to do different things while schools were closed. And everybody had to think about the problems, new problems in creative ways. And so we can do that as a system. And so looking at, and you've got an opportunity as a board, with the vast majority of you being new members, taking existing issues and thinking about them as a refreshed, board. I mean, you've got your seasoned board members who are, and you're all looking forward to working together, looking at problem solving existing problems in new ways. Your conduct, ethics, and your relationship with your superintendent. Again, those roles and responsibilities. We're talking about some of these roles right now. Again, the, not being in the weeds, not being in the daily doings, but it's also about ensuring that you understand that you do have one employee. And, the most important things that you can do are hire and evaluate a superintendent, or one of the most important things you can do are hire and evaluate a superintendent and build that collaborative relationship through those two pieces, and then throughout your relationship during the year. Really important for student learning. There's a ton of stuff on that. And then budgeting and financial accountability. To the extent possible, aligning your strategic goals to your resources. And sometimes that seems like, well, we've got this much discretionary funding. How do we move this around? That can be hard. If it's possible to set your overall goals before budget season, then you know what you're aligning your budget to. So looking at, what do we want to do? What do we want to do in this next year that we know we're going to have an upcoming budget for, thinking that far ahead, that sure, we can work within the budget we've got now, particularly as a new board. You're probably going to want to, set some overall goals, but you may be constrained by what the current budget is. You may not, but I work with a lot of boards who are like, well, this is already allocated here and this is already allocated here. But planning ahead enough to where you know that, okay, next budget cycle, if there are priorities that we have collaboratively set, is there a way to fund those in a certain way? Again, within all of the constraints that you face as a board. But ensuring that you're financially sound, obviously a big priority, and you get a lot of help with that from staff. Anything here that resonates? They have questions about? Okay. These are those big roles, and we'll talk through some manifestations of those things as we go. I'm going to give you some. Most of what we talk about and most of what is in your basic roles and responsibilities book that I think you all got ahead of time is based on number 11 here. That those technical roles and responsibilities, I can certainly answer any questions about anything in that book, but what that manual is supposed to be for is really a reference manual for things that you would need to look up anyway. Like, nobody's going to remember all of the ethics rules, right? Gift limits. You've got all of the reasons you can go into executive session there. Those are probably resources your district has as well, those kinds of things. Knowing those, but also there's other pieces in there that are useful. And we're also redoing that book. So, if you're interested, when we redo that, I can certainly get that to you.
Just a question.
Mhm.
Most of this is online on your website, isn't it? I mean.
It should be. I don't
I
know if
just
the
looked
book
at-
itself is, but there's a lot of
I
information on our
thought the guide to
website.
Plumbing and public means laws, because I just was looking at it.
Yeah,
recently.
we've got a
Very-
ton of information on the website. Yeah. Now, I will
And-
say, we just redid the website. And so there are pieces that are still being updated and missing. If you go on the website and you can't find something, you can always contact me and I can get it to you.
Okay.
But there's typically a ton of information on the website. Okay. All right. Okay. Let's look at a scenario. Speaking of social media, a board member posts on Facebook asking for input on the high school math teacher's behavior. She states that her daughter is upset because of the way the teacher runs her classroom and wants to know if others are having the same concerns. She makes herself available for questions by text, email, and social media. She goes to the superintendent and shows them the concerns, wanting something to change immediately. She also emails other board members for their input. She tells the superintendent that if they do not deal with it, she will bring it up at the next board meeting. I will say there's a bunch of layers here.
I would say totally inappropriate. I don't know where you start.
Right. Thoughts about some of this.
Well, number one, it's not her responsibility. She can interact with the teacher as a parent,
Mhm,
not as a board member.
mhm,
She needs to make a huge distinction there.
mhm.
And then together other people and as representing herself as a board member was totally inappropriate.
Mhm. Soliciting input, not taking off the hat, right? Okay. Other thoughts?
Well, and I think the veil, or not so veiled threat in the last sentence really is not helpful for building relationships and trust. And
Right. Mhm.
there's all sorts of bad stuff there.
Sure.
Not empowering the superintendent to do their job, trying to take on that, not, doing what your roles and responsibilities are,
Mhm,
overstepping bounds
mhm,
by a lot.
mhm.
Yeah, I was gonna say, stay in your lane type thing. I brought up in our community forums, Deb talked about just earlier today. You need to stay in your lane. She has a concern about the teacher. She goes, the teacher as a parent, if not resolved there, then go to the principal of that school. And then if that's not resolved, then she can work upwards. She's just overusing her power
Mhm.
at this point. So, and then trying to air grievances publicly like that is just bad taste.
Right.
I think we all have.
I was gonna say also,
There's a couple
her
of,
using Facebook, I'm guessing is personal one, but if she's using it as a public official now, then it makes her a lot of those things that become public record. So she solicited text, email, social media. Okay, hey, now your phone's up for it can be subpoenaed and your Facebook and whatever. So she mixed that too because she put on the hat in her personal life.
She did
Right.
not pause before she posted.
when you talked about that, I was like, oh, I have a scenario coming up that fits right in with that. What about contacting other board members for their input? What are your thoughts about that? What might that result in?
Oh, that could be, quorum and everything.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Right.
don't want to be doing that. You should.
Thread, but.
It
You
doesn't.
Isn't there,
Yeah, technicality.
isn't there like a daisy chain thing too? Like, yeah.
Serial meeting thing.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's when, and so what I should have said this at the beginning, I'm not an attorney. I'm not going to interpret law for you, but I can tell you what it says. And what the other thing that I can tell you is that the Attorney General's manual on public meetings and records is like fantastic. I have it bookmarked, but this is my job and I reference it probably 3 or 4 times a day. But it does a great job of providing narrative to what the law says. And it does a great job of saying like, this is how we interpret this. And, here's what we mean by this. And so, there's a discussion of serial meetings in there where like, you contact one board member who contacts another one, who contacts another one. What? You've all of a sudden, described a serial meeting when you didn't mean to. And even if you're not making a decision outside of a board meeting, you're still doing what they call deliberating toward it may be an eventual decision. And the Attorney General's manual is like, we're serious about this. Like, we don't care if you're making a decision or not. That kind of communication outside of a board meeting is not okay. And so, yeah, Dr. Phillips.
What is your, let's say Nancy and I are working together and I don't know, she's worried about that. And so she says, well, Steve, why don't you call Jeremy and Saul? I already know what Deb thinks, like Nancy, and I know what James thinks, but can you reach out to 2 of them and kind of find out what their thoughts are? What would you advise on that?
So I would say this, you can reach out to anybody you want for information for yourself. What I would not do is feed all of that back to any other board member, because then what that's doing is like essentially creating, if everybody walks into the board meeting knowing how everybody else thinks, then that's essentially a discussion outside of a board meeting, if everybody knows that. But the superintendent can gather any information from you at any time. He does not count toward your quorum. And so if he needs information, and he can talk to any of you.
There's no reason why we would need to be worried about having a discussion.
No.
Especially if I didn't tell you what you said
Right.
and you what they said.
Running on the assumption that that's not going to happen.
Right. But if I just kept my own little tally. Yeah.
I think also it'd be like, if you're initiating this versus us, like in your scenario of like, hey, Nancy's asking you to gather that information. Okay, now that's a board direction, that word. But if you're on your own, like just whatever, I think there's a big difference between who initiates it and why, because then you're almost acting as my agent if I'm asking you to go do that, and that can fall into trouble. So
Is that a thing?
Well, and this is in here too. One board member does not get to direct the superintendent, right? Nobody gets to direct the superintendent. So, and again, it's not that you don't have to, right? You as a whole are the superintendent's supervisor. So you don't have to have that responsibility of being an individual supervisor, which is good. You don't want to be. I don't want to be as a board member. Yeah.
And I think at times that will be frustrating.
Yeah.
For board members, because you'll want to do it and it's a good thing, right? It's a good idea and it's not going to hurt anybody. It's going to help kids but you're like, God, I got to wait 3 weeks for the next board meeting. There's frustration with that sometimes.
Yeah, there is. And I get it. Public meeting law. I get asked all the time, well, Kristen, then how do we have discussions outside of a board meeting? And my answer is like, you really can't. You can't. And the intent of public meeting law is that the public gets to hear your discussions about how you arrive at a decision. And, that's part of community building, but it's also that like, if you're making a decision, the public gets to hear how you arrived at that decision. And so the vast majority of your conversations, except for those who have an executive session, are going to be at the board table.
So what about we have this OSBA training coming up, and if there's a group that wants to ride together and like this has happened in the past too, or we're going to some kind of event together or an outside event that involves the board and everything. What about that?
Yep.
Or just all happen to be at the same barbecue or event.
You
or
can
at the
socialize.
restaurant.
Yeah, you can. So if you were all or a quorum of you was friends outside of the board meeting, that's fine. you can socialize, just don't talk about board stuff. And that's really hard because the thing that you probably most have in common is board stuff. But, but what statute or what the Attorney General says is, you can, and one of the exceptions to public meeting law is that you can all go to a conference together. You could all sit in the same room at a conference because that training is not specific to you. You're not going to, like, this training is specific to you. I'm asking you about your issues. You're talking about your school district. But if you come to one of my sessions at summer board or at convention, I'm not talking to you as a board or asking you specific. So you could all sit in the same room. Now I advise you to be more strategic about that. But you could. And that's one of the exceptions. And I would just say, just watch what you talk about. There have been times where I have gone around convention center and been like, you guys are having a board meeting. You got to stop having a board meeting, where they'll like sit around a table. Just monitor your conversations. And when you're all together, when a quorum of you is together, make it personal, try to get to know each other, but don't talk about, your own individual board stuff. Now, can you coordinate like who's going to go where at summer board or whatever, if that's what you're going to? Yes, of course. And can you, send out mass emails about, hey, can you make this meeting? Or, like, here's the agenda. Yes. But be really careful. So now we're in sort of the public records piece. Be really careful about your written communication to each other as well. Because there's a lot of overlap between public meetings and public records, but just remember that anytime you are writing anything in your role as a board member, you are creating a public record. Whether or not it ends up being disclosable is a matter for an attorney later. But if you but you're always creating public records in your role as a board member, always. And I follow public meeting law too, as at OSBA, because we follow public meeting law as well. And so even if nobody ever asked me for anything, every email I send is a matter of public record. And so if you get a massive public records request for a particular topic, again, you'll work with an attorney to decide what gets, disclosed and what doesn't. But like, you'll have to, look for, or somebody will have to look for like everything you've written on a certain topic. And so you just want to make sure that what you're writing is pretty official in nature. And you want to watch tone and opinions and things like that. I've had to, tell board members before, if you want to vent, you can call me. Just call me. Don't put it in writing. And so you just, you want to make sure that your stuff in writing is not to a quorum of board members, but also, something that you wouldn't want to see in the paper. And I worked at Portland Public Schools for almost 8 years, so we've really followed that closely.
So I have a general question. It's kind of on the line of all of this, and I don't know if I should ask this now or not, but so, and nothing against Dr. Phillips, but he says that we shouldn't do board retreats, but then OSBA doesn't say much about it. And then we've talked, not us as a quorum, but like when I've talked to Renee, we're like, could we still do board retreats or whatever to set our initiatives right out? And at that point, then what's your advice on board retreats? Are they good, bad? Don't do them. They have to be here, public.
So what I said was that we've been advised by our attorney that board retreats are fine, but they need to be within your school district boundaries and they are open to the public.
Yes.
So
Okay.
you can do it, but it's just, it sometimes I think, it's difficult because you kind of want to,
Well, team build.
and
Yeah, on
What
that
does
meeting, you
open-
would have to have that electronically broadcasted, just like we do here. If we were to go to Director Hayden's home to have a barbecue, we would have to have electronic version as well as the opportunity for them to come into your yard as well, as the way it was explained to me when
And
I
it
first
would
got
need
here.
to be ADA accessible and.
Yeah, so we're not against it, but there's just a lot of parameters around it. And we just want you to be aware.
Okay, so point of clarification, is the electronic version have to be now, or is that just a COVID thing, or was that like an ongoing future thing now? Everything has to be,
It's ongoing.
okay.
Yeah.
So my house is ADA compliant.
Good questions. Okay. This one.
Let me
generally-
jump on
yeah.
one thing.
Yes,
One
of
thing
course.
that I will do, you will get emails from me that are dry and boring. And at the end of my emails, I like to tell board members that do not reply all. And 9 times out of 10, what you're getting from me is a policy. And so here's a policy. It's coming from OSBA, which is coming from the legislature. And by the way, you can start thinking about what our policy committee should look like, because I would anticipate my friend Spencer pushing about 40 to 50 policies because the legislature has just come in session.
Yep, get ready.
How do we want to go through that process? So I'm planting that seed now. But yeah, you will get an email from me that will say, example, we've got these 5 policies and let's try to meet on this date or this time, and do not hit reply all. If you got questions or concerns, please contact me.
Mhm.
And so I redirect it back to me as opposed to you doing this, because then you're getting into the attorney general stuff and we don't want to go there.
Yeah.
I think there's a fine line at times, because how do you feel about a business manager? We have a very competent business manager, she does a great job. The board gets their packet and they look through it and they have questions.
Mhm.
I've been in districts where the board members would then email her individually and say, hey, can you answer my question? Like yours today. Can you answer this real quick? And she replies back to Jeremy, and he's happy, she's happy, life goes on. So when it gets to a board meeting, the board meeting's quicker because those questions aren't coming up. I like that. I like
Mhm.
quick board meetings, but what the problem is, it can look like Jeremy never has any questions and Deb never has any questions. It can look like it's a rubber stamp board because there's never any questions.
Right.
And so do you have any thoughts on that?
So yes, there is something to be said about expediency for sure. That said, a lot of times, maybe what's a good idea is to prep your staff for the questions that you have. Like, I have these questions. This is what I'm going to ask at the board meeting. I mean, if there are small areas of clarification that are just like, I'm probably reading this or something. But if it's like, hey, I have a substantive question, I'm going to ask this at the board meeting, and then your staff can come prepared with that answer. That may also, save some time, but because then nobody has to say, I can get that information for you later, unless it's, or you can have that discussion like, I won't have that information for you by the board meeting or whatever, but it allows the conversation to happen in public, allows those questions to be asked in public. It won't look like you never have any questions, and it prepares your staff for what you may ask. So that conversation could still maybe be efficient. But then you've had that rich conversation in public as well. That might be a good compromise. Excellent. This one generally produces some conversation. Okay. There we go. Okay. So this is a little bit different. An upset staff member, who's also a parent, approaches you at the grocery store and asks if you can please help them with a complaint about their child's teacher. The student's teacher has been assessing or grading them punitively, and the staff member believes it's retaliation for a tough parent-teacher conference from earlier in the year. They mentioned that they have tried connecting with the teacher. They've been unsuccessful, and now they fear retaliation in their own job. What do you do as a board member in this situation where you're receiving a complaint from a staff member who's also a parent?
Well, I think you have to remind, as board members, we're confined just like the parents or staff on policy, right? So, typically there's we have a policy on
complaints
Mhm.
and what the structure is on, the hierarchy that you have to go through with that, with those complaints. So I think as a board member, you have to be, you can be understanding, but kindly remind the person that, this is out of your purview, right? Until it, and hopefully it doesn't get to the board
Right.
at the complaint level.
Right.
But just remind them of what your roles and responsibilities are and what the processes are and maybe where they can find them and go from there.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so the next step in this scenario would really be that staff parent person to go talk to the principal, right? If they've not had sort of a positive interaction with the teacher. I think that's probably what I would be, your comment is great because you're going to get that. I don't know if you guys have gotten it in the grocery store at Freddy's or something. Takes me forever to get through Freddy's some days, but I think that helping them understand that the role is that's not our role, but you can do it in a really sensitive, empathetic way.
Mhm.
And that really the next step would be talking to the principal.
Mhm. And it will depend on what your policy says. I encourage you to get to know policy KL, which is your complaint policy. If you're going to
It's
start,
been updated this past year.
has it? Okay.
Oh, you bet.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I've been working on a lot of those policies.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yes. Right. As new board members, and you may have already done some onboarding, but as far as policies go, if you're going to start somewhere now, you may read your entire policy manual. That's great. But if you start somewhere, I recommend starting with your B section policies first, which are your board policies. That's the rules of your engagement and the rules you have for yourself and how you operate. That's how the board operates. And starting there and then knowing policy KL. Because and knowing how to direct folks to it, as you were just saying, because again, nobody knows what a board member does. And a lot of times, it's assumed or hoped for that you may solve individual problems. I mean, it kind of almost stands to reason, but you don't. And it's, it's up to you to explain that. Depending on what your policy says, there may be timelines associated with the complaint process. At some point, you have to put it in writing to make it formal. I wouldn't say that you have to memorize all that, but ensuring that somebody knows how to find it. I'm guessing, Scott, maybe it by heart. All the timelines.
So just as a general rule, let's say that you get a complaint in the grocery store. My advice, and correct me if I'm wrong, the simplest thing to do is, and you have to keep that relationship piece because you're public officials, and that's why you're here. You represent the public, but to be that empathetic piece, but then to say, I encourage you to reach out to the superintendent, because from there, your employee will then redirect his employees as to the steps in the process. So let's say, for example, in a complaint process, maybe it falls under policy GBNA as opposed to KL. And by the way, these are federal letters and they don't make any sense. So don't ask me why they are the way they are. Maybe you have a better answer than
I do not.
Say, thank you. So, but let's say somebody files a complaint under KL and I look at this, oh, absolutely no way this is GBNA all the way. We don't discount it. We will correct it. And if we get a verbal that's coming in from you, or it comes from Steve to me because it came from you, then I will put that in writing. So we don't want to get so nitpicky or so hung up that, oh, sorry, you didn't hit your 5-day timeline. So out you go. So that is how we've been operating as a district. So if we do receive a complaint from a board member to the soup comes to me, yeah, we're going to put that in writing. And then we're going to institute, as example, policy KL, which starts at the lowest level. Give the lowest level opportunity to make that correction first, and then with a certain amount of days, and it goes up the food chain. And again, that spells it out in KL or KLAR.
if someone approaches a board meeting in the grocery store, odds are there's some kind of a relationship there.
Mhm.
I've had luck saying at the end of it, you know, sorry to hear that. Are you venting? Or do you
Right.
really want to
Yeah.
go there?
Right.
And if the answers go there, then absolutely, that's policy KL. I can, you know, blah, blah, blah.
There we go.
Right. And just that simple question, I think sometimes they kind of take a pause and they're like, no, I was just kind of venting. Thanks for listening and I'm good. That's helped a lot at
Mhm.
times.
Yeah, yes, because sometimes somebody just kind of wants to be heard. They are not interested in engaging in an official process at all. Or they just kind of want to know like, well, who else could I talk to? And, you know, and then you can help them with that. And I think absolutely, as everybody's been saying, there's nothing wrong with listening. I mean, again, maybe some folks just want to talk or they want you to help them with the next resource, but there's nothing wrong with listening. And then I would say also, and this is up to your superintendent as well, but like, I would say if you are hearing things out in the community, give your superintendent a heads up as far as what you're hearing. It's not like he's going to fix maybe those individual problems. That the idea is that things get fixed at the lowest, most local level before they, you know, before they move up the chain. But my guess is, Dr. Phillips, that you probably want to know if board members are hearing about things.
Especially if it's.
Right. If there's a theme. Yeah. What would you do if you had a complaint?
The one trying to get the complaint.
If you so you're a board member, but you as a community member or a family member or as another role that you play in the community, if you have a complaint, you yourself, as a sitting board member, but also as a parent, family member, community member, whatever, you've got a complaint, what do you do?
Start by venting to my wife. You say, that's cool, but you know, get over it. But at that point, it's that idea of someone listening, and then, all right, what am I gonna do something about this, or is this just, I was annoyed and I needed to say something,
Mhm.
and then post on Facebook.
And then
Just-
this is going well.
I was gonna say, this sounds like a trick question. Because as a parent, I would do the going up the chain, right? Like go talk to the teacher and then not the principal. And then if not, then Scott or Dr. Phillips or whoever, right? But since we are a person of some power of the district, then it seems like we have a special lane we need to follow on that. And so I don't know what the answer is. It's just that's what I
Sure.
Because I think there could be either a perceived conflict of interest or a conflict of interest if I went to a principal and talked to them specifically, because maybe again, perceived or real, I could maybe influence Dr. Phillips to do something to that principal or have, not, some consequences or whatever. Right. And so I don't know, that's just where my brain's going right now. So
Could
That's all good thinking.
kind of like we were saying earlier, is there anything wrong with if I personally had a complaint, wasn't sure how to handle it, going to the expert and asking, Dr. Phillips, this is not me with my board hat on, but here's an issue I have. Where do I go? Or can you direct this to the correct person?
I think there's nothing wrong with asking, where do I go? Right. But there's nothing wrong with that. And Jeremy, I hear you're like, well, I have perceived power in this situation. This is all valid and relevant, what you're asking, because it is complicated. If you have a complaint, you have just as much right as anybody else to follow the complaint process. What I didn't hear from you is, oh, I get to bring this to a board meeting, or I get to put it on the agenda, or I get to go, because that's not what you get to do. What is complicated is, following the process when, sometimes just going to talk to your student's teacher as a board member, even if you say like, I'm here as a parent, there could be some, positional authority that it's really hard to just get rid of. And, but you do what you can, right? I mean, that's what you can do, is walk in and say, I'm here as a parent. I know the difference between my two roles. I'm here as a parent, and that's as much as you can do. Going through that same process is what you get to do. And then, hopefully it gets resolved at the most local level. If it doesn't, you keep going through the process as much as you want to, as anybody else would. It's not a conflict of interest per se. Conflict of interest in Oregon is defined as financial benefit or avoidance of financial detriment. That's when you'd have to declare a conflict of interest. Now, that's not to say that like there's not a feeling of a conflict there. Certainly. I will say that one of the creative solutions that I've heard, and this isn't possible in every situation, but some people are like, I send my partner to go do this stuff or the other parent or, whatever. Not possible in every circumstance, but that's one creative solution from board members that I've heard. But it can be tough, but I think that, just ensuring that you're following the same process as everybody else. And like I said, what I didn't hear from anybody is, well, I get to just take this, straight to the board or straight to the superintendent for resolution, right? Asking who do I go to is great, because you're looking for resources just like everybody else. But that does get tough. Okay, great. Okay, what about this one? The board held an executive session last week dealing with a student. This week at the post office, a community member approached you and asked you a specific question about something that was discussed in the executive session. What do?
I tell them it's executive sessions, it's private and we don't talk about it.
Yeah, and you don't want to give the impression that maybe it was discussed. It really has to be we don't discuss what's in executive session.
Right.
And in this small community, everybody wants to know everybody else's business. So confidentiality is really have to navigate that.
Right.
Out
Yeah.
of respect for everybody involved.
But
there's something about saying that the board's in an executive session that makes everybody keenly interested in what's going on. But
right. That I think, Deb, your point about like not confirming or denying what was being talked about is really important. And just, like executive sessions are, they're closed to the public. We're legally bound not to talk about what we talk about in an executive session, instead of, like, I can't tell you what we talked about that student, because then you're confirming that that's what you talked about. Now, the other thing about this is that it could be that they have information, like they approached you with some information about that executive session. Like they found out something about that executive session. What do you do then?
Well, to that point, when you call executive session, you have to have a reason to call it. And so in that article or whatever it's, are you in there to evaluate the superintendent? Are you in there to talk legal? Like we talked about earlier, we want to have an executive session to talk about the lawsuits against the district and lawyers. So they'll know something.
Right.
and you have to be that specific about what it is, or
can you just have
Just that there are 10.
10 reasons to go into exec. And yeah,
I bring this list with me to every meeting in case something comes up and we need to move into exec session right now. So I've got the ORSs from our friends at OSBA. There's the logo on the.
There it is.
And so, these are the folks that we listen to. And so this is where our primary legal guidance comes from. So again, if there was ever something, hey, can we go into, let me read right here, and I'll come up with an ORS, or I'll say, I don't see it here.
Right.
I don't think we can go into exec session. I'll give it to you straight, and then you make your decision from there.
So your question about like, what if they have information? So in my other job, I'm a police officer. What we do, we have a very similar thing when there's an open investigation. We've had people call and they're digging for information. And so sometimes one of the detectives I heard once said, do you have anything that you need to add, something that you think we should know?
Mm-hmm.
And without confirming or denying, they'll just be like, I can't talk about whatever it is. But if you have something that you think we should know, please tell me.
Mhm.
And that's it. But he did not confirm or deny anything. No information that person called was given. And it turned out, no, they didn't have anything to add. They were fishing for information, but just in case. So I think, you know, hey, is there kind of like, hey, if that community member comes and says like, hey, I know something, what do you know? Please tell me. But without, you can do it in a way which you're not giving them any details. So if it's something that I should know, please tell me. But otherwise, I can't talk about executive session.
Right. And I would say, you know, this scenario involves a student. I think that, you know, you always want to make sure that, you know, FERPA laws will apply, and what you know about kids, individual students is going to be very minimal. And so, and it has to be like, you know, you have to have a legitimate educational reason to go into executive session to talk about students. And again, I can't give legal advice on whether or not you can, but there has to be a legitimate interest in student records. And so, you know, so getting information from other folks or whatever, you know, about students is also, it's complex. And I would say, you know, if folks are like, hey, you know, I want you to know this about this, I would redirect, and not to give Dr. Phillips more work, but you're going to redirect to staff and not yourselves on that. Did you want to add anything to that piece? Okay. And Deb, to your question about like, how much do we have to put down as far as a notice? There is next to, you know, the ORS, there is just a very short description of like to evaluate the superintendent or something like that. It doesn't have to say anything more than that. But
So
Scott's
to
got his
go
list.
into your example of student records, we'll enter into executive session per ORS 332.061, expulsions and examinations of confidential student records must be held in executive session unless the parent or student requests an open session, can make decisions in executive session and exclude the media. General discussions of discipline are not sufficient. And so this would be information that I would give to the board chair for them to read prior to us going into executive session. So we make the public announcement as to why we're doing and what we're doing. And again, it's critical that you stay on topic and that we don't discuss anything else. But that's a general example of what we've done here in the past, this past year anyway.
Absolutely. Good.
I have a general question about executive sessions since we're on it. One of our more recent board meetings, there was an executive session. There was a person in the community who was concerned that we didn't do the whole sub article ORS, whatever statutes. But then he made a mention, this particular gentleman, made a mention we also need to disclose what documents could or could not be, you know, what are protected or what are not protected if examined. And I don't know this. I don't know much about executive sessions, and I don't know if you have any, or even Scott or Dr. Phillips has information on. I don't know. It's just there's a random.
Understood. So my practice is that I will share with OSBA attorney or WESD attorney. Those are our two primary attorney groups that we work with. And I will consult with them and say, here's what we've got coming up and why. So this isn't just some guy who's not an attorney making a legal decision. I'm always talking to Callan Sterling. She's probably tired of hearing from me. And she knows who Callan is, or I'm talking to Spencer Lewis at OSBA, who's the head of policy. And we had some discussion, for example, around policy KABA as we did that in policy committee. So I'm in contact with those attorneys because, again, we're talking about the board, so it makes the most sense to go to OSBA. Typically, if we're going to go more highly specialized, such as if there's special education concerns, then we would consult the Hungerford group because they have a little more expertise, and it's not a knock on the other two organizations, but this is a specialty area. And so, or I'll reach out to Garrett Heeman on specific issues as well. So when we get disgruntled clientele, I stick to the script, and what OSBA or WESD will tell me to do. Willamette Educational Service District that's what we go with. And then if you as a board like, yeah, kick rocks, and I kick rocks.
So I guess let me rephrase the question a little more general. When are all executive sessions, when you go into one, is everything that's either discussed and or shared, like it's a document, maybe it's, okay, let's not talk about personnel or student documents, but let's.
Any general document to that, let's just say I brought in a grocery list to discuss in an exec session or whatever.
Yeah.
Depending on the need of the exec session is going to determine whether or not, as far as I'm aware of, we don't share anything coming out of executive sessions. We don't share documents. We don't share anything. That's the whole purpose
Sure. Okay.
to that. It's an opportunity for us to discuss more in detail some legal ramifications as far as what the district is up against. And so it gives us a little bit more freedom to do that. But no, to my knowledge, there isn't any, unless I get a subpoena, we do not share any of that. We are required to keep general records. So for example, your assistant and Dr. Phillips' assistant is Tabitha. And so Tabitha would be in there taking minutes. And so under ORS ABC XYZ, she should be taking some general notes that these are the general things discussed, but they're not in the great detail like you have in an open or general session.
Okay,
Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
You bet.
Yep. By default, everything is protected. But as Scott said, if you get a subpoena or if you get, a public records request, again, you get an attorney involved in all of that. But in general, everything's protected. Questions? All right. I want to make sure that I'm not keeping you past your pumpkin hour. Let's do one more. And then I'm going to talk to you about just some tools for collaboration that I recommend. So here's one. The board is having a heated debate or discussion at a board meeting. Board members are interrupting each other while speaking, accusing some board members that they're not putting kids first. Board members are being disrespectful to one another. They're attacking each other's character. The chair uses the gavel to get attention and asks board members to be respectful. So when a board meeting is being disrupted, is there a process to follow? How would you describe the situation? Is it okay for board members to disagree? And what are some tools that you can adopt in situations like these? What do you do?
You go to Robert's Rules of Order and you ask everybody who wants to speak to get permission from the chair.
Mm-hmm.
That's one way to keep it more civil.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, in most board meetings, if people are going to share, you can just kind of nod. But if it gets heated, you have to have more structure.
Right. Yep. Anything else? How would you, sometimes things get heated and you disagree, but
Yeah, what if our prior board, prior, when I first became a board member, we had a lot of this happening. And the board chair would try to keep it in order, but the other people still would talk even over him and being very disrespectful. So what would you do in that situation? Like if Nancy's like saying, hey, knock it off, and they just kept going anyway and just totally ignore Nancy. Where do you go? I heard too that you just say, okay, we're going to take a recess.
Yeah, that's where I was.
Okay,
That's what I was
we're
going to say.
done. We're going to take a recess and then what? Go talk to the individual board people, or what do you do in that situation?
So you can take a recess, and I would say, if you're going to have a conversation with somebody, it's no more than, one person talking to another. I would say even before you do that, while the responsibility to run the meeting does lie heavily on the chair, it is okay for other board members to uphold your rules of engagement too. It's okay for other board members to, to be involved and hold each other accountable to, following the procedures of the meeting, because it can be really hard on the chair at times to be the only one who is, trying to, gavel things into order or whatever. So other folks being part of that voice maybe could help not get there. But if you do have to take a recess, then you take a recess. And I would say, you know, then somebody goes and talks to that person about, you know, needing to maintain order in the board meeting. Or else how do you continue? Like the business of the board can't get done. And that is the same thing that, you know, that some boards have had to do during public comment. Right. Sometimes that has happened.
You just tapped on something I was, you know, we at times, and I've only been coming to the board meeting since October, have had a very unruly audience. And it has been on, for lack of a better term, both sides of issues. And it hasn't ever felt like the board has intervened or anybody has said to the audience, please stop. And so, you know, from that, sitting in the cheap seats, while that goes on, it's really hard to hear what the board is actually doing and seeing. It's real disruptive. People have been pretty heated there. I keep going back to, I think the one thing that I will take away from this training tonight is your statement, we model the way for our kids. And in just even in my mind, I'm seeing this little, this phrase right above that little piece of wood up there is in big bold letters, we model, what did you say? The way for our kids. And I think that's also a good pause. It may just sort of stop somebody, but I think the break is a big moment and somebody needs to go out and regulate their nervous system for a nanosecond and just bring it down.
We had a little bit of that happen tonight too. Making comments and laughing while and being disrespectful to our superintendent as he's trying to read things. I thought that was
Yeah. Maybe we could get some of that soundproof glass. When people speak, they come through our door. So we don't hear them.
Yeah.
So one thing I would share with you all is it's critical that you continue to develop your relationship with each other. Because if you get frustrated with the way the board meeting's going and you reach out to OSBA, their patented response is, we are not a regulatory agency and they don't have any teeth. And I've heard that many a time.
I say that all the time.
Over the years. Yeah. And so they can advise and they can guide us, but it's critical that we have that respect for one another, even especially when we disagree, because if we truly want to celebrate diversity, we should be hearing different trains of thoughts here. And then at the end of the day, we make a decision as a board and then we move forward. But yeah, OSBA is not a regulatory agency. So if you call up the attorney, say, hey, you gotta, they're gonna say, that's not who we are.
Another comment, I think, on with the community people, because I know I've read in some other districts, they don't even have, if the community is being disrespectful, they don't even have open comments. They shut it down to the community. So
which has its, you know, I mean, that has a both sides effect as well. Right. I mean, there are times where I know of districts that have had to do that just because so that they can get through the business of the board for the night. And it upsets the community. So then you come back to another board meeting and folks are going to be upset. So that's a calculated risk in certain cases. I know boards that have had to just like, you know, sort of like just go virtual for a while. And
there are still some districts.
Yeah.
in that state.
Yep. That's right.
That's their choice.
Yeah.
and that's why us on the prior board has limited the speaking time because it could go on forever and ever and ever. And we have other business that we have to get done. And we don't want to be here until 11 o'clock at night trying to get our board business done.
Right.
So we limited the speaking time.
Right.
And I think at one point too, we even limited how many people could speak because we just had too many people that.
30-minute block.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Because it just, you know,
Right.
I don't think any of us want to be here until 11 o'clock at night. So that was one thing.
Yeah, I would just add in that I think that there's a difference between, you know, healthy disagreement and debate between board members. And like in this situation, like not using personal attacks towards each other. I love the culture and climate that we set that we model for our kids. I think that it's a great mindset for all of us to have, that if we show them that, yeah, we can disagree and get heated without it being a situation where we're putting each other down or accusing anyone. Really simple concepts that.
And it's not that, I say this a lot, it's not that conflict is a bad thing, it's combat, right? We don't have to be conflict avoidant. I mean, there is healthy debate that can be had. If everybody's interested in that, it's combat that is really tough and damaging to the relationship. You do not, do not need that. I'm going to just talk about some tools that I recommend. We will not get to all of these scenarios tonight, but that's okay. All right. So a couple of things that I just want to recommend to you to both establish and continue a collaborative relationship between, among you and then with your superintendent, is to have a good superintendent evaluation process. This can be a supportive process that builds a relationship. So we've got a tool that we recommend, which is as close to national norms as exists. That's a superintendent evaluation book. It's free. I don't know if you already use it. I can give it to you unless you've got a process that you already like. But we recommend adopting that process really early on in the cycle so that Dr. Phillips knows what to expect from all of you as far as how he's being evaluated, and that you know what to expect throughout the year. One of the pieces that we recommend with that we've been working with boards on and have heard back from them that this is the transformative piece of this is quarterly evaluative check-ins throughout the year. And if you are truly doing an evaluative check-in, you can do that in executive session. So, and what I mean by that is it does not produce the big document at the end of the year. It's not the formal evaluation. But if you're talking about, progress on not general, like you would report at a superintendent, report during a board meeting. But if you're talking about performance and you're saying here's what we're evaluating on, here's what's going really well, here's what, if you're talking about performance, you can have that candid conversation in executive session throughout the year. I always say, my boss is Steve Kelly. I want to know throughout the year how he thinks I'm doing. And I don't just want to hear during my evaluation in June. That's not enough. And so we recommend this sort of quarterly until you get to, I don't know if it's due by March 15th, or do you do the March 15th date or somewhere around there? Maybe not. Okay. And that once you've done your formal evaluation, you adopt the next cycle right away. So again, so that Dr. Phillips is working with you to set goals, what's being evaluated, so does he. You adopt the tool that you're going to use and the timeline that you're going to use. Any time that you can set clear and common expectations, the better off you're going to be. And particularly since there are 7 of you, having a one voice expectation to share with Dr. Phillips so that, that there, I'm going to talk about that in a minute. When you can have clear expectations with each other and clear expectations as a board with your superintendent, the clearer those expectations are, the better performance, the better relationship you're going to have. So a strong superintendent evaluation process and cycle is one thing we recommend. We recommend board self-assessment. Look at your own practice. And we've got a tool for that. However you do that is not as important as the conversation and the goals that come out of that. So when you're assessing how you operate and assessing your own performance and looking at how you function together, and then using that to say, and here's what we want to focus on for ourselves and our development over the next year, and then assessing those goals at the end of that year and keeping that iterative, that is going to improve you as well. And again, is a collaborative process. That discussion is really important. Looking at your own performance is important. The tool that we have is based on those 12 standards. And, but again, you can do that in any way that you want, but we'd recommend that. Having a board operating agreement, which is essentially a prioritized list of things that you expect from yourself. So you've got all kinds of B section policies that say, this is how we operate, but to, crystallize those into a few really high level expectations that you have for each other, that you will hold yourselves accountable to, like no more than 5. Like, what do you agree to fundamentally as a board? Some boards I know like have that agreement and they keep it in their board binder, and they keep it at their table, and they remind themselves and they remind each other, hey, one of our agreements was, respectful disagreement, or respectful, behavior, or everybody comes to the meeting on time and prepared, or whatever seems to be what you need. Having that agreement can be really helpful. And the same thing with a board superintendent operating agreement. When I facilitate these, the board comes up with no more than 5 high-level expectations for their superintendent, and the superintendent would come up with about 5 high-level expectations for the board. So what is it that you want out of each other? And to do that annually too, because that could change annually, just depending on what's going on. So that can be a powerful collaboration tool. And then communication protocols. This always ends up in a much deeper discussion. I facilitate this all the time, but I always start out the discussion with, okay, what if there's an emergency? How do you want Dr. Phillips to communicate to you? Because there are 7 of you sitting around this table. Like, maybe each of you has a different expectation. Well, I want an email. Well, I want a text. I want a phone call. Having the discussion about like, okay, well, there's an emergency. He's going to need to communicate to you in one way and one way only. And so talking about, again, expectations about what, like, and then you have to trust that like he's gonna get back to you when he can, when he's not on the ground dealing with stuff, that kind of thing. But what if it's not an emergency? What if there's a media request? What if there's something else? What do you do if you get a complaint? Like those kinds of protocols, again, setting expectations, and so that your superintendent knows what to expect of you, you know what to expect of your superintendent, are some tools that can be useful.
Is there a way that you're going to, you said OSBA has those tools ready for us to work with. So can you send them to us?
I can. The templates that I have that are free are a superintendent evaluation book, and examples of a board operating agreement and a board superintendent operating agreement. The communication protocols are just things that I just build with boards. There's not really a template for that. And the board self-assessment is something that we do charge for because we bought it and we license it from Tom Alsbury. So that is for purchase to use from us, but everything else I can send to you.
And how much is the price for that? Do you know?
Off the top of my head, no, I think it's both it might be 700, something like that. It's both for taking the assessment and then for us to come and facilitate the discussion.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
The communication protocols, I think those are important.
Yeah.
Because every board member doesn't want to know everything.
Yeah.
But some board members kind of do. And I do talk to my board chair more than the other 6. I just do. Right. And so that's just something we got to work out. Right. I'll do whatever you want, but that's kind of typical. The board chair is just in the loop a lot more. They set the agenda with me and they're just, yeah.
Can you talk real quick? I heard you say something about media, like talking with the media.
Yeah.
Like what would you advise if we have somebody that wants to get the scoop on something.
Right. Generally, your superintendent. Yeah. And I would say, so a lot of times, you know, if it needs to be a coordinated effort between the chair and the superintendent, that's something for them to discuss as far as who's getting, because if there needs to be like well, there's a board comment to this, and then there's a district comment to this, that can be, you know, divided up. I like to think of it in terms of like, you know, somebody wants to do a story on the great things that are going on here. You know, how could the board chair comment on that? How could the superintendent comment on that? But in general, media requests, I would say, go right to staff, go right to your superintendent. Would you agree with that? Or am I? Okay. Okay. Again, it's not that you don't get to, you don't have to.
Well, the thing that. Because a board member saying something. Is perceived as that's what the board thinks.
That's right.
And the board might not necessarily agree.
Right. Yeah. Anything that I missed? Anything that you want to discuss? Any questions that you have? I know everybody's getting tired.
I have a question, and
Yes.
this is a policy question, and I looked quite a bit on the
We'll see if I can answer.
Attorney General's
Okay.
site and at the OSBA. And my question is, this may not even be relevant anymore because there's not 2 meetings a month, but do Oregon open meeting laws allow voting in work sessions? Because I read one place that usually work sessions are not used for voting.
That would just be a practice that you
Yeah.
have. A meeting is a meeting.
Okay.
So you could put something on the agenda that needed action during a work session. You're determining what your meetings are for.
Okay.
If you had, I don't even know if a policy exists around, it may or may not, around how a work session is defined, how a regular meeting is defined. But if you needed to take action on something during your second meeting of the month or during a work session, you could. There's nothing that prohibits that.
Because one said that a work session is a work session and votes aren't usually taken in work sessions. I think, I don't.
Generally not, but that's just practice. That's not by law.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
we,
think it is in our, I think it is in the policy B that they count as a regular session.
yeah, we addressed that when we, last summer when we said, okay, let's kind of distinguish between the 2 board meetings. What do we want to accomplish?
Mhm.
One of them is maybe the typical board meeting, and then the other one's the works. And to be honest, it never really panned out the way we thought it would.
Mhm.
But the intent was, one was a work session,
Yeah.
and there wouldn't be public comment because we want to save the time for work.
Right. Yeah.
And yeah, it didn't really.
Yeah.
It wasn't perfect, but that was the intent.
Right.
The question I have for you, is there any kind of a document that says, like makes a statement? I don't know, evaluates the principal.
Mhm.
The superintendent gets a check because yes, they evaluate this principal. Board doesn't get a check because they don't evaluate the principal. And then the next line is approves a budget.
Right.
Superintendent doesn't get a check.
Right.
The board
right.
does. And something like that, that's really clean about roles and what.
Is there? There may be something in the book. There are so many things.
Procedure is trying to talk.
Division of duties.
Sorry. So there's a thing that says on page 5, division of duties, board work, superintendent, administrative work. So hire superintendent, you hire staff.
Right.
Set goals, vision, your employee relations, that kind of stuff. I don't know if
It's
as
a short, yeah,
detailed
it's
as
a
maybe.
short list. It's not super detailed, but because the details would be enormous. But so I wonder if that would help. I'm looking at it right now under Jeremy's shoulder. I wonder if that would be helpful, or if you're looking for something with a lot more detail in it.
Just one of those. things.
Sure.
Draft.
Yeah. Yeah. That is one of them.
Kind of a scenario thing like you took us through,
Mhm.
but quicker, you know.
Right, right. Yeah, I wonder if taking a look at that might help. I mean, it's pretty high level, right? It's like policy AR, that kind of thing. I'm certainly happy to work on something and as a resource though.
Great.
Yeah, happy to do that.
I think this is kind of, that's in this, you're probably like procedures. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's what maybe Dr. Phillips is looking for is like.
Something like that, but for
motions,
roles.
Motions and subsidiary motions and main motions and whatever, right? But it's like, who does it, who can do it?
Right.
No, whatever, I think that's what you're kind of. A little bit longer list of who's in charge of what, to define, help define that line, right?
Yeah. And there will be a learning curve, of course. And so I really encourage any board member anytime to call me. You all have my cell. Call me and say, can I do this? Is this in my purview? And then hopefully I'll say, yeah, absolutely. Or, might say no, but I like that back and forth so we don't get each other in trouble.
Any questions, anything you want to discuss or need? No.
You happy to know we didn't talk about it.
I'd just like to say thank you.
Yeah.
For you for
Yeah,
coming.
thanks for
and
having
it's
me
a good
out.
Start for us.
Good, good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And the Tiger 12 and the school district's lucky to have you on the board.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. Well, thank you for having me out. Good luck to you. You can give me a call if you ever need anything or have a question. That's what your membership is for. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So next on our agenda is future agenda items, and we have the middle school fees, which we'll need to vote on, right? Are there other issues that people want to bring forward?
There was KABA.
Yeah.
We discussed talking about that. There was to have an executive session.
Mm-hmm.
I would assume prior.
Mm-hmm.
About
About
legal issues and law firms and such. I believe that's all.
I have, this doesn't have to go on next menu, but I have a question. Yeah, I know we have a new communications director. Does Bridge and Bolster, are they still working? Are they under contract or they're gone?
They're done.
They're done. Okay, that was just a question because I was looking through all the meetings. And the legal questions we're going to talk about in executive session. And my other questions that I had is can we discuss like how to get to one bank? I mean, or not one bank, two banks or three banks at some point? I mean, maybe not next session, but because we already have a month. But if we gave it a month, and so that means we need to discuss that.
I'm gonna have Heather with them.
Okay.
We'll get there.
Because since that was on that, so that would have to be on the agenda because we voted for 1 month.
Yes, we need to bring,
Yeah, the 1 month was the legal resources,
Oh, that was the banks. That was.
we can, it's kind of wrapped up in.
kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of those resolutions. We'll just make sure.
And this is not anything to do with agenda, but after we got the invite from ADAC, I just had a curiosity during the summer because it would be less interruption. If there was any chance of setting up schedules that, just randomly at your convenience to have some tours of schools. Just like ADAC invited us out, and they're going to do us on tours and just to say, and maybe not all of us could come, but if you had, different times in different schools, and that I know that'd be helpful to me. I know where all the schools are, but it's been years since I've been in all of them. And the other thing is like, you don't want to be invasive. I mean, it's 7 school board members suddenly show up at school. That seems like that's interrupting education.
Well, if it's during the summer,
Yeah,
it's
but in
probably
the summer
fine.
it would be fine.
Yeah, and we might highlight the ones that have been benefited the most from the bond.
Yeah,
So you can see that at the same time. I can work on that.
that was just a suggestion. I don't know how other board members.
Yeah, one thing that we did prior, since there's so many schools and everything, we kind of took on the school that was in our district, kind of as our school. And then we kind of shared the high school. And because that way it makes it so we're kind of connected.
Right.
And being in that, in the schools, because it's hard to get out there and be into all the activities and all the stuff, but it's really good to have us being represented in the schools.
That's a
an
good idea that we could talk about at future board meeting. I know it's late now, but I just wanted to plant some seeds.
I should decide whether you want executive session at the beginning or the end, as opposed to us guessing, throwing it on each other.
What time are we starting? Next time too?
7? Or is that-
We can start.
I mean, it sounds like we have a shorter agenda next time, but
Start.
You can really start whenever you want. If you know there's an executive session, it's gonna take a while. You can start it like if 5:30 was doable tonight. For everybody, then maybe you start an executive session at 5:30 and then you just tell everybody that the board meeting won't start until 6:30 or 7. And because we don't want them waiting. That's not fair. So
yeah, I mean, I like that personally for 5:30 if we're gonna do an exec session and then. I mean, how long do you think you're gonna go? Like an hour?
Well, we can block, say, an hour's time as an example, but we don't have to stay in there for the whole hour. We may be able to knock it out in 15 minutes and then but then you have to wait another 45 because we publicly announced your regular start board time. So just because we block an hour for exec doesn't mean we have to be in there for an hour in exec.
Is anybody opposed to having an executive session at the end? Because then you wouldn't have that.
Which is fine, which is a practice as well. That's why I'm bringing this up now for you to discuss.
the only hesitation I have with that is if we're gonna have one of the Willamette ESD lawyers in there.
Yeah.
Maybe for a future one. So I think this one we should do it at the beginning
Okay.
and then. Try to knock it out and then.
Probably dependent on what who's invited.
So let's say 5:30 sound okay?
Yeah.
August 8th? Okay, executive session with the regular board meeting starting at 7?
So my intent will be to take this document that we had in our board packet tonight, and it was the legal issues, and push this to OSBA. And you heard me mention Callan. Callan's my primary, but they may redirect me to half a dozen other attorneys there and say, all right, this is what we want to do. I need to know what the executive session is that we can meet under and why, and then see if we can get an OSBA attorney to come and meet with us. My secondary choice would be a WESD attorney. We have 2 with Lisa Fraley and Christine Nesbitt. I would go with Christine Nesbitt, who's now been with WSD for a year. And Lisa, I do know I've talked to her and she's trying to phase her way out. But that would be my suggestion to you as a board, is that we would reach out to the OSBA, hear the concerns. We have 7 groups of attorneys on here. We would like to reduce that number and potentially eliminate 2 or 3 of those. One specifically, I know for sure that came up front, and I would point that out as well.
So I think that probably needs to be Lisa Freely because OSBA is not savvy to all the legal issues that we've had. Lisa is. Christine's getting up to speed, but she's not up to speed. And the good news is, Nancy, as board chair, we get to meet between now and then to build the agenda. So a lot of this will get flushed out at that meeting.
But this is what I'll be working.
And can we I don't know, how long were you thinking of having the executive session?
I was thinking like an hour.
Plenty.
That should be, okay, yeah.
So then
So maybe,
We can start at 6 if you want, but you're informed of what the legal issues are and we aren't, so we might have more questions.
Yeah.
Because it's been privileged information, and so it may take longer than what you would normally do because we're just coming in raw.
Yeah. So if we did like an hour, like 5:30 to 6:30, and then go right into or come back and do our board meeting. And that way, maybe we can get out of here earlier.
And I'll get the advice of Lisa Freely about how long she thinks she needs to educate the board on legal and recommendations on who we should keep and not keep.
And just for clarification, I am honored to be board chair, but I see this more as a co-chair. And so whenever possible, I'd really like for the vice chair and I to meet together so that we have a very smooth working relationship. I think it'd be helpful to have two voices, two opinions. Deb and I don't always agree, which is good. And so I feel comfortable with that arrangement if that's okay.
Oh,
Yeah, it's not a quorum.
well, on top of that, I think I have contacts in other districts, and there was a suggestion that actually, if you're recommending that, Nancy, I would almost say then Scott comes in with Steve. So basically there's two of each. And so there's a he said, she said type thing, and everybody's on the same page. You all make the agenda together and agree with it. And like, there's there's nothing in the weeds that aren't going to be a surprise.
Yeah.
And I'm just,
No, I like that. And Scott's got 7 years of superintendent experience. You can tell, he knows what he's doing. He's great to have in there. And just so, I guess, chair and vice chair know how we typically do it is we prepare an agenda. And when I say we, I really mean Tabitha. She develops an agenda and she uses last year's agenda a lot of times to build it because things are time sensitive. And so we don't miss stuff. Then we get to look at it and say, yes, that has to happen. That has to happen. Can't that wait? We need to add that. And so you'll have a framework. You won't come in cold.
Okay, well, is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Well, real quick, I know it's
Okay.
not quite as big as all these, but with the flag salute, is that something you've always done that? Or for a while? Or, I mean, are you wanting to continue to do that? We don't want to just assume that's what you want to continue doing. So I'm not asking, and if
It's not a great.
yeah, I just didn't want to assume that you're going to keep doing that. So no, I'm okay with you continuing. I just didn't want I didn't want to assume and be like, oh yeah, Director DeHart's going to keep doing that. I just, so I'm not asking to do it. I was making sure he wanted to continue.
Anything else? Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
A second?
second.
Okay, meeting is adjourned.
Good job, everybody.
No vote.
And that was a long one. You guys, we all stayed away.
Is there,
Did you make the motion?